go to here. Let's go live. Okay, we are live, hopefully. Yep, looks like we're live. So yeah, welcome to the stream here. We got the Imperial Locals. Every week we hold a Locals tournament here on the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description of the stream if you want to join in on any future ones. But it's always a blast. This week we're covering Imperial Format, and it should be a lot of fun. It's a format that's pretty, like, underexplored. You know, I featured it briefly on my channel in the past, and it's a pretty good one. I think it's like, if you're familiar with the Android format, which is a little bit more popular, very similar to that, but it's still, you know, unique enough in its own way to be fun. So with that, I'm going to wait until it's 9:01 EST. Oh, it is 9:01 now, EST. So, yeah, let's get this party started. So I'm going to shuffle up the seeds, do a bit of seed shuffling. Let's go to that bracket there. And we are going to start the tournament unless there's any last minute things. Nope, looks like there aren't. So we're going to start the tournament now. Let's get this show on the road. Last time we had a tournament around this time, went a little bit late, so I'm just going to try and keep things moving quickly here. So send the challenge link to the people on the Discord server, and away we go. Going to be a fun time here. So we got Dueling Book open here, ready to go, and I've got a Chaos deck as my default. I guess I should go to some Imperial decks. You can see the mess of my sort of deck lists here. But we got some good ones. I played a tournament with Relinquished. It would be cool to see that show up in this Locals. I really like the deck. But there are a lot of fun decks in this format that don't really get to see play outside of it. So exciting to see. And yep, we are starting. We are good to go. We got Dump Truck hosting for Patrick Star here. Oh, and I should dive in to the general chat. I always like to hop on the voice chat here just to chat with people as we're going. You know, as people finish up their games, it gives them something to do afterwards. So always a blast. And let's see. It looks like Dump Truck versus Patrick Star is beginning now. So let's dive into that one here. There we go. Dump Truck versus Patrick Star. We got Dueling Book being a little bit slow, but there we go. All good there. And they're saying good luck, have fun, diving into it. Looks like Patrick Star will win the rock, paper, scissors, so they will get to go first. In this format, that's pretty good, given that there are 3 hand rips here. There's Imperial Order as well. So, you know, can lead to some pretty good advantage on the first turn player's part, but you don't always draw that sort of thing. So it looks like Patrick Star has not drawn that sort of thing. They're just committing a Mechanical Chaser to field, setting 1, and passing back to Dump Truck. Mechanical Chaser is the level 4 monster in the format with the highest amount of attack and no drawbacks, and in this format, that sort of stat is very important. So yeah, Dump Truck to open it up with a Painful Choice, very powerful card in this format. You can send the 3 hand rips going first, or going second in this case, plus potentially like a Jinzo and another monster. That way you get Jinzo out of the deck. You potentially get it in graveyard for if you've got like a revival spell as well. But it looks like Dump Truck's just going to send 2 ways to deal with Mechanical Chaser there, in addition to the 3 hand rips. Looks like Patrick's going to give Dump Truck the Fisher. It might mean that they don't have an MST for the Snatch deal there. Heavy Storm's coming down to clear that back row away anyways there. And it will hit a Solemn Judgment. Very powerful trap. But unfortunately, you know, this early in the game, you don't necessarily want to commit it unless you don't have any other back row. And so that means that Patrick Star might not have much other back row here, or they were potentially just saving it, didn't want it to get removed by something like Heavy Storm or Mystical Space Typhoon. But Mystic Tomato Pass is still a very powerful play on Dump Truck's part here. Mystic Tomato, really annoying monster to deal with. It's one of the reasons why Fisher does see play in this format, as Fisher can deal with Mystic Tomato quite cleanly. There aren't too many other cards that do that. We see a Heavy Storm coming from Patrick Star's side as well, hitting an MST. MST is very powerful. Can Soldier's interesting. They must have like a... Oh, they're setting 1. Okay, so that means that that set's probably like a Mirror Force, or Rush Recklessly potentially. I can't really think of another reason why they do this, but they're going to bring out a cannon soldier here, say no priority. They're not going to use the effect right away. So if Patrick Star does have like a trap hole or something, then they will be able to use it here. Cannon soldier will not get the effect. Looks like Demtruck's just going to switch that to tomato defense, try and crash the cannon soldiers together there. Trying to play around that mirror force, and that will clear both cannon soldiers. I don't know how I feel about that play, because you're gonna have to deal with the mirror force eventually anyways. So it might have been better just to like summon out the tomato, attack in to the cannon soldier. When that got mirror force, then commit something to board. But I don't know. We don't see the hand, so it's tough to say. Looks like Dumptruck's going to fire a Nobleman of Crossout, hitting a Man-Eater Bug. So now if players have Man-Eater Bugs left in deck, they will banish them. Looks like Dumptruck's on 2 left in the deck, and Patrick Star also has 2 left in the deck. Or 1 from field and then 1 left in deck. Pot of Greed coming down here, drawing 2. Kind of interesting. Maybe they should have saved Pot of Greed till after Nobleman, but I do like why they did that. In case the set was like Imperial Order or something, it's better to do it in this order. But Dumptruck's going to set 1, pass back to Patrick Star. That was indeed a Mirror Force. No Sakuretsu armor or anything else like that in this format. So Mirror Force is the battle trap of choice. Right Geki coming down on the set, just playing it cautiously, and that did pay off for Patrick Star here, as they did hit a tomato, and now they are able to attack in with Mechanical Chaser there. And I think that was a good read to have, because if it was like a Sangan or Witch, you wouldn't necessarily feel as bad just committing it to field attacking in. Because, you know, you'd lose it, but you'd get something back from deck. And you could keep the tomato in defense as well. Patrick Star's choosing to rip that last remaining card out of hand with that confiscation there. Was a Magician of Faith, so pretty good rip on Patrick Star's part here. Life points are also pretty even, and the cards are also relatively even. 1 card on Patrick Star's side, 2 cards on Dumptruck's side. It looks like Dumptruck's thing here. They're going to go for a Call of the Haunted on the Mystic Tomato, attack in for 1400 here. Set 1, pass back to Patrick Star. So we've seen some pretty intense back and forth gameplay, and that's part of what makes this format fun. You can have these back and forth games, and it's almost like sort of the end of an era, where I feel like you can define the DM era formats into like 3 separate categories, basically. You have Yu-Gi Kaiba until Imperial, which is more just like beat stick heavy, like back and forth, you know, nothing too extreme. Then you get like Android format, and the aggression starts ramping up a bit. So you have things like Gemini Elf, Pazuzu Soul Eater, and Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, all in the format, all very strong, and it makes the format a lot more aggressive. And, ooh, Fisher on the Faith. Always awkward there, but I see why they had to do it. Yeah, kind of unfortunate, though. But, and then after that, of course, you get Chaos format, which Chaos changes everything. You have both the Chaos monsters, and then you have the formats after that when things start getting banned. So that's how I sort of classify the 3 eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, wow, okay, we got a Goblin attack force here, not attacking in. I think that is the smart thing to do. You don't want to attack in to the tomato, then you just get out like a Sangan or Witch, and that attacks over the Goblin attack force, but Change of Heart will end the game there either way. So, yeah, maybe it would have been better to attack into the tomato. That way your opponent couldn't actually switch the Goblin attack force to attack. I believe that's how it works, because, you know, its effect doesn't say that only you can. It says its battle position cannot be changed. So I think that also applies to your opponent there. But yeah, we've started off on a really good game. Now, when the siding happens, I like to sort of dive into other games just to see what everyone's on. So that was Dumptruck versus Patrick Star. Let's dive into History of YG1 versus Soul. It seems like we've got a very different game here. Looks like Cyberjar has just resolved there. And it looks like we got some Dream Clowns. We got a Hayabusa Knight there. We got some Jinzos as well, MST, and Cyberjar of Soul's Own. Cyberjar coming out in attack, so it seems like they like their position well enough not to set the Cyberjar and mess it up. Dream Clown in attack also is pretty good, as, you know, then they can potentially switch that into defense later on. They can't do it this turn because it was special summoned. But yeah, they'll get a Sangan Church as well here. So very interesting. 2 very different decks from the sort of standard good stuff decks that we saw in the hands of Patrick Star and Dumptruck. Although, you know, Patrick Star's deck did play a Goblin attack for us, so maybe there's a little bit more there than meets the eye. But, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully they'll make it a bit further, or we can check back in on that game later on. But everyone out there watching, let me know, like, are you familiar with Imperial Format? Have you seen my videos on it? Or is this your first time sort of learning about it and seeing it in action? because I always find it interesting. I'm never sure like how many people are like long-time watchers of the channel, like back in the early days when I was covering Yu Kaiba, or how many people are newer, like drawn to my stuff like Yada or Chaos or things like that. But it looks like Cyberjar is going to hit over the Hayabusa Knight, and I believe what was left was a Mamanga. And so the question then is, like, do you even attack into the Mamanga? Do you leave it be? Now, of course, History of Waijo 1 could always flip up the Mamanga next turn, crash into the Dream Clown or the Sangan, and get 2 more Mamangas back. So, you know, there is the debate, like, will it even matter? Do I just want to do it now? You could also say that, like, having 2 more Mamangas in deck just, like, breaks up History of Waijo 1 potentially. And if they draw the other Mamanga, then it's better just to leave it there. It looks like they're just going to pass back to History of Waijo 1 there, choosing not to commit things like the MST or anything like that. We don't know what else the Cyberjar revealed to Soul as we dived into the game after that actually was resolving. But, you know, hopefully it was something good. But we'll have to see exactly what History of Waijo 1 does here. They're thinking here. They do have like 8 cards in hand, so this is a bit of a choice. Now, Cyberjar in this format is limited, so either both of these players only Cyberjars available there. Very powerful card in like Empty Jar and stuff. Looks like a Dark Hole is getting fired. That's very interesting. If that is the manga, yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. They must be going for an aggressive push here. Sangan will allow Soul to search something out here, though. But life points are pretty even thus far. Now, we do know that History of Waijo 1 is on Hayabusa, so they could potentially have an OTK in hand. If they've got Hayabusa Knight plus a bunch of equipped spells, they can equip those to Hayabusa Knight and get in for a ton of damage. Just Soul doesn't have a way to stop that. We don't see like a Mirror Force or something in Grave, so it could definitely be a Mirror Force. It could also be like a Trap Hole or something to stop the Hayabusa that way. But if History of Waijo 1 does have a way to clear the back row, then, you know, it might not even matter there. But let's see what they do. Looks like Soul is going to search out a giant rat there. Seems like they're on a bit of a rat box deck, a bit of an earth deck as well. Makes sense given the Dream Clown. Clown Control does like to play the giant rats to get out the Dream Clown, then pop an opponent's monster next turn. Painful Choice will get fired here. I was in Grave, but, you know, Soul could have potentially had a counter trap or something. Looks like History of Waijo 1's going to send Jinzo, Trap Hole, Trap Hole. What else are they going to send here? I mean, those are 3 pretty decent ones. I feel like if you're Soul, you give them the Jinzo here for sure. But I don't know. I'm curious what the other 2 will be here. Looks like a knock as well. And will it be another knock? Is the other knock in hand? Unclear. We'll have to see what they do there. Okay, it looks like I missed some comments in chat here. I look at the comments on my phone while I'm doing this because I don't have dual monitors set up. So sorry for missing the comments that people have been sending. As McGee, Imperial March. Yeah, I'm excited for this Imperial March as well. You know, Imperial's a cool format, and I feel like it doesn't really get talked about that much. Because it's just treated as sort of like a discount Android. Which, to be fair, I think in many ways it is. Like, I also view it as sort of a discount Android. But still cool to see Imperial getting played. Hey, Hobby, glad to have you in the stream as well. And yeah, awesome seeing clowns already. I really like clowns, so cool to see. Rush Recklessly was the set there. Looks like Giant Rat's coming out, though, so likely not an OTK here. And it looks like Soul left the Jinzo in Grave. That's kind of interesting. I personally, whenever my opponent sends Jinzo, I just give them Jinzo because I'm like, I can keep you off of monsters on field more easily than I can keep you from drawing like Reborn or something like that. So yeah, I don't know about that, but I guess Knock is kind of dead if Soul doesn't set. So I guess that's why you potentially do that. But definitely an interesting sort of game state here. Giant Rat's annoying to deal with, you know, just like Tomato in the first game here. Giant Rat can be very annoying to deal with because if you attack over it, it fetches out another monster. Could fetch out like a Dream Clown even. And Dream Clown is really annoying to deal with. So Soul's got to think about exactly how to do this. They're going to go for Reborn and they're going to target History of Wajo 1's Jinzo. Could have majorly backfired if the call was said, but we do know that Soul does have MST, so MST could have been fired on the call and prevented the call from bringing back the Jinzo before Soul brought it back there. And this makes the play with giving them the knock make a lot of sense. Soul's going to attack over the rat with the Jinzo first. Kind of interesting, but I guess like if History of Wajo 1 searches out a monster that's not rat, then, you know, Soul can just run over it with rat of their own. Or if they bring in a rat, they can crash and have the advantage in the rat war if they don't have any other rats in hand. So rat's going to hit into this rat here. And History of Wajo 1's on 2 rats in grave. Soul's on 1 rat in grave. So if they haven't drawn the other rats in their deck, then this will work out better for Soul 65 than History of Wajo 1. So another rat comes down here, and we're just seeing these rats go at it. And as a note, because History of Wajo 1 is non-turn player, they do have to search first. So Soul will always get the advantage of like knowing what they have to deal with, what to bring out off of rat there. So it looks like History of Wajo 1 is bringing out the Mamanga here. And this is a bit of a choice. Like, do you attack, like bring out a monster to attack over the Mamanga? Do you bring out like a Dream Clown to potentially, you know, pop the Mamanga next turn? You do know both Mamangas are gone. Okay, yeah. So it's not really as big a deal to attack into the Mamanga here. It's just gaining 600 life points. Because you're dealing 400. And so I think this is probably the correct play there. But we'll just have to see. I'm going to make sure my chat is still... Okay, my chat is still updated, but yeah. Okay, and Soul is thinking here about what to do in main 2. There's a question, do you commit back row when you've got a live Jinzo up? That could be easy pickings for History of Wajo 1's like MSTs and things like that. History of Wajo 1 has used 2 MSTs already though, so if they want to use the third, that means 1 less MST to worry about for later. And it could potentially be good, especially if you like set an MST of your own. If your opponent fires MST on it, then you can just MST their back row, get some value that way. And MST can be really important here as stopping potential equips. So we'll have to see what History of Wajo 1 does here. They do have a couple different options. They don't have to worry about traps on Soul's part. They don't have to worry about like trap hole. They don't have to worry about like IO, things like that. IO's already in grave, as I think I mentioned earlier. So yeah, looks like they're going to fire the MST on the back row there. And let's see what that is. And it looks like it is the MST firing on that trap hole there. Snatch Steal on the Jinzo will allow History of Wajo 1 to grab that. And they're just going to hit over the rat here. Kind of an interesting play. This will let Soul get out a Dream Clown to pop the Jinzo if they so choose, and they will gain 1,000 in their next standby phase. So, kind of an interesting play. They could also just choose to pop like a monster that History of Wajo 1 commits on board after this, but it looks like History of Wajo 1 is not going to commit any monster to board after this, which I think is probably smart given the Dream Clown there. Soul is going to gain the 1,000 there. And they've got to decide, like, do they have a way to clear the Snatch Steal and get back the Jinzo, or do they just want to pop the Jinzo with the Dream Clown? A couple different interesting decisions here. This is why Clowns is, I think, like, kind of an interesting deck in this format. I'm not sure if it's tier 1, but it does have a lot of different options at a lot of different points in the game. And it looks like Soul is going to pop that Jinzo there with the Dream Clown. And if they've got another monster in hand, they commit that to field, attack in. Looks like they're going to go for a duo first, though. I feel like you want to go for duo after popping the Jinzo, because there's nothing that your opponent can do to stop the Dream Clown there, and you want more information, and you also don't want them to know what you're necessarily going to do. But I think it's ultimately fine, like a very minor like sort of sequencing thing, which is coming out here, attacking in for 1,100 now, which is limited in this format. So, you know, this is Soul's 1 Witch here. And let's see what History of Wajo 1 is saying here. This will deal 1,100. Okay. Looks like they will take that. And main 2, what's Soul going to do? Are they going to commit more to board? Are they going to commit a way to protect their Dream Clown while it's in defense? No, it looks like they're just going to pass back to History of Wajo 1. Very even life point total as well, 5,600 versus 5,500. Looks like History of Wajo 1 is going to set a back row, pass back to Soul here. And I believe we do know about Jinzo in hand. So this is a bit awkward because Soul 65 contribute over the Witch for the Jinzo, shut off that back row, get in for 3,600. And we do already know that the Snatch Steal is gone. So that could potentially be a good option. You don't have to worry about Snatch Steal. You still have to worry about Change of Heart, but I think it's probably for the best. And just playing around like Mirror Force. Looks like they're tributing over the Dream Clown there instead. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not the biggest fan of that at all, actually. I feel like you keep the Dream Clown in rotation here. So that way, if your opponent does set a monster, you're still winning on the next turn. I get why you do it in case of like board clears, but either way, you're getting a search off Witch. Like, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of that play, but I mean, I do get it because, as I said, for the sort of Witch search, it makes sense. Reborn is going to come down on the Jinzo there. Looks like that Jinzo is going to crash into Soul 65 Jinzo there, destroying them both. And then Call of the Haunted here is also going to come down and bring back that Jinzo likely. Yep, it's going to bring back that Jinzo. So yeah, now the Witch play is paying off here as now Soul gets to search out a monster with Witch that can potentially deal with Jinzo. Although as a note, in this format, there's like no exiled force. So it's a bit tricky. There's not really much you can search off a Witch to like instantly clear Jinzo. But there are some decent options that you can grab. Man-Eater Bug is an option potentially. If you've got a way to protect Dream Clown for a turn, that's an option potentially. So, you know, Soul does have potential options here. And if they do have like a Change of Heart or a Snatch Steal of their own to take the Jinzo, then this could potentially just be the end of the game. But of course, you know, History of YG1 could potentially have a monster to commit to board as well. Soul's going to search out a Magician of Faith, potentially grab back a powerful spell like Pot of Greed or Monster Reborn here, which would be very good. Looks like History of YG1 is going to pass back to Soul here. And let's see what Soul does. Let's see what powerful spells have been used up. Yeah, just Pot and Reborn so far. But I think Soul's in a pretty decent position. Now, we do know that History of YG1 is on a Hayabusa Knight deck, and those decks are somewhat threatening. But it looks like Can Soldier's coming down. Oh, is there someone in chat? I didn't notice. Oops. Well, yeah, Change of Heart, or Snatch Steal will be the end of the game there. So that will be game one there. And yeah, we're going to dive in to the next game here. We got Danny Droid versus Raga Drago. Yeah, sorry if someone was in chat. I didn't hear you come in, so that is my bad. But yeah, it looks like this game is already on the second game of the match. Looks like Danny's won the first game. They're going to Fisher a tomato. You know, again, the Fisher is very useful for doing that, but Raga Drago does have a Reborn to bring back a tomato potentially here, to bring back Mechanical Chaser if they want to go that route, but I do think the tomato is the better choice. They're going to hit into the Germ. Now Danny will be able to get out 2 more Germs from deck, dealing 500 damage to Raga Drago here, which is kind of unfortunate. But, you know, Raga Drago potentially has a way to deal with those. I mean, Mirror Force is gone, so that's unfortunate for Raga Drago. But they also just might want to get through these monsters as quickly as possible because they are very annoying to deal with. Raga Drago is going to set a back row, set another monster here, pass back to Danny Droid. Now, something to consider in this format, Morphing Jar is legal, so that could potentially be a Morphing Jar now that Raga Drago's hand is empty. Could also just be like a Man-Eater Bug to pop one of the Germs there. It could be a lot of things, actually. Could be Magician of Faith as well to recycle the Reborn, now that the Reborn is used up, because there were no other spells in Grave. A lot of potential options that it could be, and Danny probably is thinking through those different options as they consider their turn ahead. They're going to go for an MST, hit a Dust Tornado there. Makes sense that Raga Drago would be on Dust Tornado here. If Danny is playing a bit of a burn deck, which, you know, we only see the giant Germs there, but if they are playing other sort of burn cards, then that will be pretty good. Last Will getting fired, always scary there, especially when a Jinzo comes down. Last will be able to bring out a monster from deck here. And let's see what they bring out. They are going to grab a lot of potential options here. Yeah, which I think that makes sense. You do this in case like it's Cyberjar set. And which is also just a good monster in general for just getting searches. So they're going to hit in to the tomato with the Jinzo there, clearing that. Riot Dragon will be able to bring out another monster here. Cannon Soldier will wall up against anything else Danny has there. So now the question is, do you hit into the set? I feel like you do hit in the set because, like, yep, and it is indeed the Morphing Jar. So I think both players played this extremely well, getting rid of their hands before attacking into the Morphing Jar there. So now both players have a full set of 5. Danny Droid does have the priority to go first here. They've got like a Change of Heart or Snatch Seal. They can take the Cannon Soldier, start tributing. Whether that's optimal or not is another debate. But these are just options that can happen. I feel like Danny's probably not too worried about a lone Cannon Soldier, especially at 7450 life points. But it could be annoying if Riot Driver does draw like Change of Heart or Snatch Seal there. Looks like Danny's going to set one and pass back to Ragged Dragon. Now that set might be like an MST potentially. Comfy is going to be pretty good here. No like Imperial Order or anything to stop that because Jinzo is on field negating all traps. So they will get a peek at the hand and rip out whatever the card. Rip out an IO. That's pretty good there. It looks like Danny has Tomato, Mechanical Chaser, and Raigeki. That Raigeki is going to be annoying for Ragged Dragon to play around a bit. So I'm curious what they'll do here. They're going to bring out a Sangan here. And what will they do with that Sangan? Maybe crash it into a Germ. Maybe they've got a Raigeki of their own. Oh, Change of Heart on Jinzo is going to be really good here. Take control of that. That it can then tribute off for Cannon Soldier. So this is a pretty good swing on Ragged Dragon's part. And also if you like basically tribute off the Sangan as well, then the Cannon Soldier's left. Although you might not want to do that because Tomato could then crash into the Cannon Soldier there. But either way, this is going to be a fair amount of damage coming Danny Droid's way. Now, Danny Droid will get a search off the Witch. So there actually is a bit of a debate, like whether you hold the coffee for main 2 after you've cleared the Witch, or whether you wait, or whether you do it in main 1 just to sort of see what they're working with, see what you got to do. But I think there's ultimately a fine ordering. You know what you have to sort of play around a bit, and you can sort of have an idea of what Danny Droid will grab off Witch, so you can sort of play around that too. It looks like Dan's going to grab a Cannon Soldier. Hello, welcome to the stream, Izuna Gaiden. If you were in stream earlier, I apologize. I didn't hear you, so, But we got some fun.
Oh, he's Android?
Yeah, this is Imperial, not Android, so. But still a very fun format. And very interesting play on Riot Dragon's part. They know about Raigeki in Danny Droid's hand here. But they choose not to tribute off the Sangan. Maybe they're trying to bait it out just by having 2 monsters on field. Maybe they don't really care about that 500 damage that much. But they will get a search here off the Sangan here either way. So what will they search? Looks like they're going to search a Witch of the Black Forest here. That's pretty good. I mean, you get other searches off the Witch later on. That's sort of the conga line of guys that's very typical of these old DM formats. And it looks like Danny's going to call the Haunted back a Jinzo there. Very powerful play. Something that, looks like Riot Dragon does not have a response to. And this could potentially be the end of the game here, depending on what Danny's got. Not like the most likely situation, but there are some instances where this could potentially be the end of the game, as there aren't any ways to stop an OTK push with a Jinzo on field. And we don't know what the new draw was on Danny's part. Looks like they're just going to attack in with the Jinzo there, deal 2400. And then just pass back to Ragged Dragon, playing around things like Raigeki, Dark Hole. And it looks like the Fisher is there, so maybe they should have played around Fisher as well by attacking in with a monster there. But Witch is going to come down, attack in for 1100, pass back. Now, Izuna, have you played Imperial before, or is this your first time seeing the format?
No, I play all the format, and for Imperial, it's just, if I remember, it's the same format with Jinzo's first time, right?
Yeah, this is the first official format that Jinzo is playable in. And very good. Wow, a trap hole on Sangan there. You do what you got to do sometimes. And Danny Droid did probably have to do that, because you don't want to be put into Cannon Soldier range.
I like Imperial because you have limited removal too with Mechanizer is Mechanical Chasseur, sorry, forget the name.
Mhm.
Uh, is cool. And
Yeah,
with Jinzo, you can play. It's cool.
yeah. The unfortunate thing is that limit removal is only a one copy, so it's like a
Yeah.
bit hit or miss. But since Mechanical Chaser is already being played, you could argue that limit removal has a place in just a general good stuff deck because you're already playing a bunch of machines, so why not just have basically an instant OTK button occasionally?
It's just on my version of Tomato Control in Imperial. So
Mm,
I play one overdrive. So with Jinzo and three copy of Mecha,
mm,
I have five machine. So I think limiter is cool. You have basically I think Rush Necklace is more play
mm.
because it's strong with all monster. Just it looks fun to play Overdrive too.
Yeah, it's a bit interesting because Overdrive, for those of you who don't know at home, it's a machine that's 1600 attack. So it's like a bit less good than Mechanical Chaser, but if you are going all in on the machine strategy, it can be good enough. Snatch coming down here on the Mechanical Chaser, though. Is that the end of the game? Yep, that is indeed the end of the game. I was just
Mm.
set right Geki, unfortunately. So yeah, not much could be done there. Might have been better to set the Magician of Fate there instead, get back Reborn and go for a push that way. Um, but it's a bit tough to say. And you play around different things. But it looks like that will be the end of that game. So it looks like Danny's going to move on to the next round, facing Hoy there. So there we go. And also, Dump Truck did win versus Patrick Starr. So we'll put that in as well. Yeah. And let's dive in to another game here. So I think the last one of the first round is History of Wide 1 versus Seoul. Um, and this must be, oh, this is game 2. Yeah, we saw the completion of game 1, but this is just, it was rehosted. So,
Mm.
yeah. It might be
Oh,
game 3.
Hayabusa.
Yeah, only 3 comments in chat. Let's try and get more comments in chat. If you're watching the stream, let us know any questions you have. Also, what your thoughts on the decks are. Yeah, let's get that engagement up. And also, if you're enjoying the stream, leave it a like. It really does help a lot. Hate to do the whole standard YouTube shtick. But it does drive the growth of the channel and the community, so we can hold bigger locals in the future. Um, yeah, looks like Hayabusa's having a tough time this match. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Hayabusa in this format. Like, you don't really have any of the super big equips that like makes it insane. Um, but it's like not bad. It's sort of like a rogue option that's fun. Um, it's just like
Oh, Hayabusa is decent.
yeah, it's just like not really the best in the format. Um, but it's better than like Mahavilo in my opinion. For instance, but Mahavilo is
Yeah.
just kind of been power crept since release, so you know, um, but you never know how people are gonna do with a given deck, and Hayabusa has seen some decent results, so trap hole coming for the rat there, clearing that. Oh, Last Will. And this is a format where you can use Last Will after a monster's been sent to the graveyard. So, very powerful spell here. Will allow Soul to get out a monster from deck. They're going to choose a tomato there. Maybe try and win a recruiter war with that rat. It's a little bit awkward for History of YGO 1 here if they don't have a way to deal with this. Because you don't really have a good ending point. Because you want your Momongas to stay in deck. Um, but the only Earths you're probably playing are like Hayabusa and Momonga. And yeah, they are going to bring in a Momonga here, but it's a little bit awkward because now there's 2 Momongas on field there. They can only fetch out 1 from deck. This is going to gain History Rider 1 some life points potentially, but still kind of weird. And Soul isn't even going to attack into that Momonga. Oof, but that might come back to bite them with that Raigeki there, clearing both their monsters. Omamanga is getting tributed off for a Jinzo. Very powerful play. Although, if you're history wide to one, you might want that life point gain at this point. Um, with 4350 left, that's a bit of a worrying amount. Um,
It
well, let's see
it
what happens.
just after the creator format, so the treasure, the recruiter monster like La format is very strong for a long time.
Yeah. And that's cool to see in sort of revisiting these formats as well, just sort of analyzing how Mamanga and Germ fit into things because they are very tempting cards to play in decks that are playing recruiters because they thin out your deck even more, they keep your board presence even more. Um, I think they're very interesting and very good. But it looks like that'll be the end of that game. Hayabusa stuff didn't really come up that much, but the Rat Box stuff definitely did. So Rat Box, pretty decent deck here. But yeah, they're going into game three. I think we have the game between Hoy and Danny Droid here as well. So let's dive into that, see how that one's going. It looks like Hoy is on a burn strategy of their own. So chain energy, very, very good. I mean, burn was a major threat in treasure format, major threat here too. So let's see how this deck does. But Forceful will let Danny potentially disrupt their plans a little bit.
I'm not sure Chain Energy is very cool because in this format you have Heavy Storm and you have free MST. So I don't think it is the same impact. In God format, in Panda Burn play Chain Energy, but MST is limited.
Well, so in
Now,
treasure format, which came before this one, you also had triple MSC, you had double heavy storm, and chain energy
yeah,
burn is a really good deck there. It actually won a tournament. So the deck is
I
very strong. So it is a bit awkward because you do have some spell and trap removal, but you also have ways around that spell and trap removal. And your opponent doesn't really have any way to search that out. There's no like Breaker the Magical Warrior that they can search out off Sangan or Witch, etc. And you can actually manage to make things really annoying for them if you play your cards right. So the deck is quite formidable. Looks like Witch is going to get flipped up. It looks like Danny's going to go on the aggressive here, attacking into this set. And they hit a Germ. Germ, another very powerful tool for this burn deck. Um,
yeah, Jam is good.
yeah. And Danny's down to 6,500. And double Germ coming out here. If Hoy has a way to clear that Witch of the Black Forest, then they can potentially get in for 2,000 attack off those Germs. So we'll have to see what they do. They could also just crash the Germs into the Witch, deal 1,000 that way. But that might be a little bit less good. And it looks like Danny's going to pass back to Hoy. What will they do there? They're thinking. And they are going to commit something. They're going to bring out a manga as well. Do they have a way to clear the Witch? Otherwise, they might just be crashing. Oh, they're going to change of heart the Witch. Wow, okay, this is going in for a lot of damage here. This will be 4,100 damage. That is honestly really good in a deck like this. You want to get in that sort of damage when you can. And this will be brutal for Danny to deal with because they only will have like 4 activations of things from hand with chain energy. So, maybe even no, I think they took 1,000 more than they had to. They should be at 2,400. I believe, right? Yeah, no, they took a 1,000 more than they had to. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna message
Yeah.
them and rectify that because that is a major thing here. Um, yeah, just because I mean they're at 900 right now. They should be at 1,900. And that really does change how things work with chain energy because at 900 you only have one more committing from hand. But 1,900 you have a little bit more. Um,
Ah, yeah, one time more. Yeah,
yeah.
I just see.
So, yeah. So I figured that was worth messaging there. Let's see if this actually changes what Hoy would do here. Okay, it looks like they're saying I should have noticed. Yeah, it looks like that's the end of that. So no like IO or something set. IO can be annoying for chain energy burn decks to deal with, but also like IO burns your opponent for 700 every turn, and you've got enough monsters that are very annoying to deal with, like Momonga and Germ. So yeah, okay, it looks like getting hopped off there. But we still got the commentary going. And triple germ engrave Momonga there as well. Unfortunate to lose all those powerful monsters for the burn deck, but rip, there's a Discord problem. I see. Yeah. No worries about that. But yeah, it happens. Looks like Danny should take another 500 there, down to 1400. So now only 2 activations of things with chain energy left. So still precarious position to be in. And I mean, they're just going to probably hit in for 1850, right? You just don't fear the back row. You're not in a position where you can do that. You don't have the luxury of fearing the back row. You just got to get aggressive. And unfortunately, that's a Mirror Force. So that's going to be really rough for Danny here. Even if they want to commit another monster to board, they're at 1400. So they might not get the chance. If Hoy has a monster in hand just to hit in, this could potentially be the end of the game, even if it doesn't kill them this turn. Chain Energy is just a very powerful card for that reason, and Cannon Soldier will be enough. That is exact damage, and that will be the end of game 1 there. So very, very intense burn deck. Bobby Barrow says, I miss the old days. I do too. A lot of fun stuff back in the day. Playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Playing with these old classic DM staples. A big blast to see, I think. But yeah, if you do want to sort of relive that glory of the old days of Yu-Gi-Oh! You can head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server where we do host locals in these tournaments. We also just have places where people can discuss these formats as well. So definitely head on over there if you're not already there. But yeah, playing these games, very, very nostalgic way of sort of recapturing that old playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic. So it looks like Hayabusa actually did manage to attack in with an equip here, so we actually do get to see what this deck can do when it's actually firing on all cylinders. We didn't quite get to see that in the last game this deck won, or in the first game that we sort of caught a glimpse of. But, if you're playing a 3-game match and Hayabusa does win you one of those games, that's still pretty good. Soul is thinking about what to search with that Sand game there. Bit of a tough choice in the face of what History of Wajo 1's got. 3 back row set, no fear. Could mean that they've got a Solemn set. Could mean that they've got Imperial Order set. Although, if they've got Imperial Order set, you're probably not too upset about that, since then Axe will not boost Hayabusa by 1,000. So, you're feeling pretty good about that. Looks like Soul's going to search out a Mystic Tomato, sort of put a damper on that Hayabusa attack plan. And it looks like History of Wajo 1's going to pass back to Soul there. Let's see what Soul does. If they've got Heavy Storm, that's going to be pretty brutal for History of Wajo 1 potentially there. And Soul is going to think here. Let's check what's in the grave. Just 2 rats. So it seems like we've had some rat crashing potentially. But let's see what Soul does. Bit of a tricky option. It looks like they're just going to set 1. And are they going to commit any more back row to field? I feel like you can feel fine committing some back row to field, because it's very unlikely that History of Wajo 1 has a Heavy Storm set. But yeah, Joey did use the Hayabusa Knight against Yugi's Grandpa. Yeah, that was a very fun episode from a season that a lot of people view as just sort of like filler. But I found that season fun. And Hayabusa Knight did see some play. I think, then he also used it somewhere else. Did he use it against Weevil? Or am I thinking of a different warrior that he used against Weevil? I forget. But yeah, Hayabusa Knight is a classic Joey card here. It looks like History Rider 1 didn't even attack into the set, just saying, I don't want you to search out anything with that tomato. I'm just good just waiting around, seeing what happens. Deal with it says Joey used non-luck cards. Crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's a rarity, but it does occasionally happen. Painful choice getting fired here, and there is indeed the IO, but that's kind of awkward for History of Wajo 1, because now the Hayabusa is down to 1,000 attack. will they adjust the stats? It looks like Soul does know about that anyways there. Trap hole coming down on the rat. And now, Soul might potentially flip over the set tomato, maybe, if that is a tomato set, which I feel like it very likely is. It is a tomato. Now, the question is, does History Wide You Want have a trap hole set as well? Another one. Looks like they do not, but they might have a Mirror Force set. Nope, it looks like they will indeed take that. The high boost will be destroyed. No monsters on field distribute 4 Acts of Despair's effect, although I think it would still be negated by IO, even though it activates Engrave. But yeah, looks like History Wide One saying, nope, I'm not keeping this up. They're going to go for an MST. They're hitting a Last Will. Change of Heart on the tomato. Oh, is this going to be a push for a lot of damage, or is this just a Cannon Soldier Jinzo coming out? Looks like it's a Jinzo coming out, attacking again for 2,400 damage. That's a pretty formidable board to see here. And they're just going to pass back to Soul. Now, if Soul does have a way to out the Jinzo, this is looking pretty bad for History of YGO1. But if they don't, then this could be pretty good for History of YGO1. What are they going to do here? Do they have monsters as well? It looks like they still have monsters. So it's still a bit awkward for History of YGO1 here. They just kind of have to hit into the sets. And it looks like they hit a Cyberjar. That's really, really good for Soul there. Pop the Jinzo. Now could definitely backfire if History of YGO1 gets all monsters and Soul gets none. But that's the risk of Cyberjar there. It looks like History of YGO1 will hit a bunch of flip monsters of their own. And Soul will hit a tomato along with some very powerful spells and traps there. So it looks like History of YGO1 is going to set all those monsters. And Soul would likely probably just summon an attack. I mean, I don't really see a reason why not to. Unless there's like a snatch steal, but yeah. And Bobby Barrow says, very crazy deal with it. Yeah. It's like weird looking at the gimmicks of the characters from like the original Yu-Gi-Oh anime versus some of the later series like GX and stuff. Because, when you get to GX, all the characters have a given archetype that they play, and that sort of follows through with like 5Ds and beyond. Of course, in 5Ds, like the very main characters often don't really have the most sort of like archetypal stuff. Like, for instance, Yusei has Junk, but that's more thematic because, he's from the satellite, from the trash district, right? And Jack Atlas does have the sort of like Red Archfiend stuff. But that's like less of an archetype in 5Ds. It more becomes an archetype later. But yeah, Addison McGee says, Joey played the Brooklyn stereotype. Yeah. Yeah, as little Karibo would say. Look at that Change of Heart coming down here on one of the sets. And honestly, you can't really go wrong with any of those sets as you either hit powerful cards out of your opponent's hand, you get to pop your opponent's side of the field. And yeah, so it looks like this is going to be pretty good for Soul here. Cyberjar, they're just going to flip that up, just pop the entire field, get rid of the Morphing Jar, Magician of Faith, etc. Cyberjar or Magician of Faith were the two best cards probably to grab there. And it looks like Soul will hit a Sangate and a Manga, both of which are pretty decent. Honestly, you probably wanted to hit the Morphing Jar most, so you could hit the Raigeki and Dark Hole out of the hand. I'm kind of surprised that History Wider 1 didn't set those just to play around the Morphing Jar's Change of Heart play. But yeah, I mean, those are some other very powerful cards in hand there. Call, Snatch, Premature Burial. But the MSTs should be able to stop the, all of those basically. Let's see, what is there to, there's Jinzo to potentially bring back. But yeah, Sangan and Mamanga are both going to be annoying for Soul to actually eat through. Especially because no Mamangas have been used up so far. Yeah, Joey was from Brooklyn, Japan. Yeah, that iconic town in Japan, Brooklyn. Yugi's archetype was spellcasters and warriors, Bobby Barrow says. And yeah, I mean, they sort of just did it based on like actual typing as opposed to like archetypes back then. Like Kaiba's, for instance, was dragons, and like Bakura's with fiends and things like that. But then when you get to like GX and beyond, you get like actual like official archetypes and stuff. Deal with it says, we went from vanilla piles with DM to every character as a full archetype with GX. Yeah. And then 5D sort of like reached a middle ground a little bit as well. It looks like a Cannon Soldier's coming down here and just starting to eat through some of those monsters there. A little bit awkward here, but you do what you got to do. And they do hit the Sangan there. Sangan is going to get a search. A lot of potential good options to search here. I mean, let's see what they get there. Oh, also, they need to add those 3 cards to hand. The Mirror Force Call and MST there. Those are very important. I mean, I'm just gonna message Soul. Oh, it looks like we had someone try and join the call, but unfortunately didn't quite work there. Yeah. And then Toon Monsters were an archetype. That is true, Addison McGee. Yeah, Pegasus did have an archetype. The Toons were that archetype. But it's interesting with Pegasus because you also have the Relinquish stuff too. So he had these sort of like 2 disparate sides to his deck. And that's, again, not unique as you go beyond DM as well. Because, like, for instance, in GX, Chaz has a lot of different archetypes, like Ojamas, the Armed Dragon stuff. And there's a lot of different things going on with them. But it is kind of interesting to see how the game evolves, like, in the lens of the anime itself. So kind of cool to see. But, yeah, Bobby Barrow says, in 5Ds, an ace monster could be summoned every duel straight from the extra deck. And that is very true. And, you know, they do take advantage of that. I mean, like, every episode, they're summoning out synchro monsters from the extra deck. Just showing off the coolness of that new summoning mechanic. DL says, would have been sus if you say pulled up with a full archetype deck. How's bro affording the 3 of ultra rare engine piece? I mean, DL with it, you say that, but look at Crow, right? Crow's also from the satellite. Crow rocks up with like full power Blackwings, right? Bobby Barrow says, only in the filler episodes, Addison McGee, like the Orichalco season in the movie. Toon World in the canon episodes was a modifier to normal monsters. That is very true as well. For instance, like Toon Blue Eyes White Dragon is because Pegasus stole Kaiba's Blue Eyes, and with Toon World on field, it turned into a Toon monster. So that's a very, very good point, Bobby Barrow. Confiscation, getting to rip a card out of History of YG1's hand. You probably take the Raigeki, right? I mean, Raigeki is really annoying for you. And you've got the triple MSTs for the like Premat, the Call, the Snatch, etc. So I feel like you just take Raigeki. Yeah, History YG1, the banished cards from the Cyber Jar, right? Yeah, but also, you know, if like I try not to, you know, sort of influence the games too much. But if you are listening, you know, sort of just do your own thing. Don't necessarily take my advice or non-advice or whatever. But yeah. I don't know. Part of the reason why I have this channel is because I find like franchises like this are very cool to watch evolve. And I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially can evolve in interesting ways compared to something like, for instance, Magic the Gathering, right? Magic the Gathering does evolve over time. Like, you definitely see trends in how cards and decks are designed. But because of set rotation, I feel like that change is a little bit less obvious to see. Whereas without set rotation, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, Hidden the Faith there. That is very interesting. And that will get sent to grave. Yeah. Soul has the right thing there. You do send that to grave. You don't send that back to deck. Would be pretty good for History Wider 1 if the Faith got sent back to deck and then they get to set it again. But nope. But yeah, I just think it's cool to watch the evolution of a game like this because you actually get to see monsters fall out of favor, or sometimes monsters come back into favor, given different changes in the metagame. So, you know, Cannon Soldier is a prime example of this. Like, in these early formats, Cannon Soldier is really, really good. And, you know, it's still decent in later formats, but that definitely does change over time. But yeah, it looks like Soul's is set in 5. I do like that play. It does play into Heavy Storm, true. But I do think that this is a very good play to make. You just kind of got to set 5 when you know your opponent has like Premat, Snatch, etc. You have to set those MSTs to deal with that. Bobby Barrow says, Yu-Gi-Oh! Evolved too much to the point where everything is an FTK. And yeah, I mean, that's fair. Like, different eras of the game definitely feel different to different people. Like, I personally, for me, like, you know, a lot of people might accuse me of being a Yu-Gi boomer since I'm focusing on all these old eras. But I do like the overall course of the game. I think that each era of the game had its own sort of charms. It's just they're doing different things. And that's why I want to provide places for people to actually play all these old formats. I mean, format library exists as well. But, having more places as well is also very good. So we got the YGO from Zero Discord server. There's format library, as I mentioned, a lot of format specific Discords as well. And I think the more places we can have to play these old retro formats, the better. Yeah, happy to have you here, G-Lam. Thank you for saying hi. We've got a pretty intense Imperial locals today. And yeah, Bobby Barrow mentions Magic Gathering has lots of power creep as well, and I agree 100%. It's just, as I mentioned, it's kind of trickier to see that like on a format to format basis, right? Especially at the start of a lot of formats, like when they just rotate things out. It can be a bit tricky, but that'd be cool. Maybe someday I make an MTG from Zero channel and feature that as well. But yeah, it looks like a mechanical changer coming down here, hitting into that Momonga, just saying, I got to clear this eventually. I'm just going to go for it now. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad play. The Raigeki's gone, which is pretty nice. You still know about the Dark Hole in hand, which is kind of rough, but yeah. Deal with this says set 5 pass Yu-Gi-Oh! As Kazuki Takahashi intended. Well, maybe not with junior rules, but by this point in time, yeah, set 5 pass is pretty cool, in my opinion. Bobby Barrow says it's easy to play retro formats online, but in real life, most people can only keep track of 1 or 2 decks. It's kind of unfortunate. Like finding, for instance, like an in-person local scene for a lot of these formats is next to impossible if they're not like Edison or Goat. Especially because like people have to invest in actually building the decks for these formats. And while they are cheaper than a lot of like modern decks or even like decks in Edison and Goat, they do still cost money. And, a lot of people don't necessarily want to take a chance on a lot of these formats. So it's kind of unfortunate, but it does happen sometimes. Oh, interesting. It looks like the Momongas were probably in hand. That's very funny. Mirror Force coming down here for that Momanga there. Kind of interesting to see there. I guess it makes sense because you are running low on life, and also you don't want your opponent to gain more life here. But Soul might be running low on monsters. I mean, they've gone through 2 Mechanical Chasers, triple Tomato, double Rat. They might be running a bit low on stuff. They're just going to normal summon a Morphing Jar here because they don't have the resources to actually, set it and draw 5 because they're running low in deck. So I think this makes a lot of sense. They're going to attack in for 1,700. And they're going to... they're going to commit 1 more back row, pass back to History YGO 1. History YGO 1 in a bit of an awkward spot, but we do know about that other Momonga in hand, so they could potentially summon out that Momonga, crash into the Sangan, or just hit over the Morphing Jar. Looks like they're going to go for the Dark Hole here. If I'm Soul, I'm probably fine with that, right? I get the search with Sangan here. But we'll see what happens. Deal with it says, I can't believe we're not on Karate Man. Maybe they are. Maybe we just haven't seen it. We'll have to see it. Bobby Barrow says, my locals has Edison events, but that's it. I have a Goat, Edison, Tengu Plant, and Hat deck. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the experience with a lot of locals. And it's like unfortunate, but it makes sense why it exists that way. So online is really like the only way you can play it in a super organized level, unfortunately. But yeah. It looks like we've got... Okay, I thought there was another reportable loss there. Okay. Bobby Barrow says, Dark Elf was undervalued, could defeat Mechanical Chaser and block it at its worst. And we have seen some experimentation with sort of like more beatdown focused decks. And Dark Elf has featured in those. I personally like Jiraguma a little bit better because it hits over 2k defenders, which still do see play. And also you can use it even if your life points are pretty low. But this is interesting. Soul is going to let that Rat stick to field. Sangam will get hit over. They will get a search off Sangam. This is looking pretty rough for Soul here if they don't have a way to deal with that Rat. And I think the Witch has already been searched out, right? Yeah, Witch has already been searched out. You don't have... I mean, you could search out a Rat of your own. How many Rats? Okay, that is the last Rat on History of YGO1's part. So you could potentially search out a Rat if you've got that 3rd Rat in deck. And that might be the way to go. But we'll have to see what they do. Deal with it says, in hindsight, Dark Elf and Jiraguma again end up being evolved forms of the 2k defense walls. Yeah, that's true too. Just having one sit on field, it can serve a defensive purpose as well as an offensive purpose. The only issue is that like your opponent can play around it a bit better than like a set wall. But yeah, it's cool to see these sorts of things change in evaluation over time. And Soul's going to search out a Magician of Faith here. And I have to ask the question, like, do you have time to do this? I don't know. It's a bit tricky to say. It might be better just to get aggressive here, but I don't know. It's tough to say. You're both running low on cards. Change of Heart is engraved, so you don't have to worry about that at least. Same with Raigeki and Darkhold. And those are the main ways to actually deal with Magician of Faith. So you're very likely going to be able to get a card back off Magician of Faith, which is very good. But it's just, do you have the time? I don't know. But we'll have to see what they do here. And Soul's going to think about this a bit. They're going to summon out a Witch, set a back row, and pass. That is very interesting given the Mirror Force is in. I disconnected from OBS. Are we back online? Okay, we are back online. Oh, it just disconnected for a second. Sorry about that. But yeah, looks like Soul is going to go to the damage step here. Fire a Rush recklessly. I did have an inkling that this was potentially the case here, but I didn't want to say anything, as I do know that History of YJ11 is watching the stream. So I didn't want to necessarily clue them in to if this was a thing. I mean, they might have just done this anyways if they didn't know about it. But yeah, they're going to bring out a Dream Clown. A Dream Clown will be able to pop the Witch next turn or pop a Magician of Faith that we do know Soul has in hand. So I think this is a pretty good search there. Yeah. Deal with it says, when's McDonald's format so we can make Infinity Attack Goddess of Whim? So technically this version of Imperial format is, it does include McDonald's format because that's at the end of my coverage of Imperial. We sort of had a poll, like, do we want to include the McDonald's pack cards and the video game promos in Imperial? And people voted yes, because they don't really change much. Infinity Attack Goddess of Whim, I don't think is legal for this format, though. I think it's an awkward thing there. I think there's some debate over whether that was actually a thing that could happen in the first place or not. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that we go with the ruling that it can't. But yeah, Just Punch says, I mean, YK, you could consider a set 5 format because there's no Heavy Storm and it's one of the most popular TM formats. Yeah, I think set 5, it's definitely like changes a lot. Like for instance, Hat format, right? Hat format has a lot of games where you just set 5, summon out a monster, and like pass to your opponent. And in those games, you do have a lot of negation, right? Like you've got Wiretap, you've got like Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment potentially. There's a lot of things that it could potentially be. And okay, it looks like we got a Witch tagging into the Dream Clown here, and they're asking if that's okay. Looks like it is okay on History of YJ1's part. And then in the damage step, they are going to go. I mean, I feel like that's inherent in just saying it's okay. So yeah, it looks like the Rush Recklessly is going to come down here, hit over that Dream Clown. And now Soul could potentially feel a little bit safer setting the Faith if they want to. But yeah, it is very different from YK, and it's very different from Imperial as well. You don't often set 5 in this format. But like when you do, there isn't really as much negation because people aren't necessarily playing a bunch of Solemns. People are maybe playing Imperial, which is negation, very annoying negation, to be fair. But you can have the read on that in these sorts of situations. So, yeah. Deal with it says, my experience with Hat format is trying to play the game and failing to do so because of every single back row under the sun. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty common sort of experience in Hat format. But still a fun one. It looks like History of YJ1's just setting a bunch here and passing back to Soul. Now, this is a little bit interesting. What has History of YJ1 gone through? They've not gone through Jinzo, but there are potential ways that Soul can deal with this. So it's a very monumental turn here. Just Pun says, have you tried Firewater or Vegas? I have, I believe, played at least one Vegas game. I think I joined a Vegas tournament at one point. Or I joined a tournament like from around that time. And I do think Firewater and Vegas are very fun. And I'm very much looking forward to it. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, like, I'm not just like a Yu-Gi boomer who's like, oh, after extra deck mechanics became a thing, the game like ended. Like, I think that every sort of format had its own charm and its own appeal to just different players. And so I am very excited to get to Firewater. Oh, Reborn here, really good. Targeting Jinzo, I mean, yeah, this is really good. You got MSTs left, and yeah, it looks like History of YJ1 saying mine, and Soul will say yeah. So an MST is going to come down, hit that call, and yep, this will allow Soul to grab a Jinzo from History Wager 1's grave. And I feel like this probably will be the end of the game here. Because if that set is a Magician of Faith, then you could potentially flip up Magician of Faith, add back like a Change of Heart, and that would just be the end of the game. So, yeah, but it is indeed the Faith, and there are plenty of different ways to end this game from this position. So, yeah, and that will be it. And very, very intense game here. So very cool to see. It looked for a while like the High Boosted Knight deck would take it here, but unfortunately, High Boosted was not enough. And yeah, very, very cool games here. But yeah, deal with it says, or Bobby Barrow says, 2 of my locals died when Synchros came out. And, you know, again, like, I'm not trying to say that people have to think the Synchros are good or not. Because there definitely are players who do not like Synchros, right? Like, we saw that when Synchros were first introduced. And if I can provide a place for those players to play, that would also be great, too. Although I personally think, like, even if people did, like, sort of sign off at that time, you know, they should probably, like, dive in and, like, try and play a bit of the later formats just to see how they feel. You don't necessarily have to go, like, into the deep end with Modern, but you can at least, you know, like, try it out a little bit. Try, like, a little bit ahead of where you ended, just to see if there's something there, like. But, yeah. Deal with it says, I played a couple games with League 2 of Firewater, and it was pretty cool. I've never looked at Vegas. And Justice Pump says, a lot of people that have tried both say that Firewater and Vegas are just hat without all the non-games that happen due to Soul Charge and extra deck negate spam. And I am very excited to reach those points and sort of do a spotlight on that. It probably will take quite some time to get there, though. Although I am planning on going a bit quicker through GX than I did through DM. So, yeah, it should be fun. And to be clear, like, the reason why I'm planning on going quicker through GX than DM is because I feel like there's a lot of GX formats that don't change much at all. Like, they introduce maybe 1 or 2 cards, but beyond that, it's like not much has changed. And I'm not going to spend like a super long time on GOAT. Like, people often ask me, like, when am I going to get to GOAT? And I will cover GOAT on the channel, don't worry. For people looking for that GOAT fix, I will be making some videos on it. But you know, I feel like the value of my channel sort of lies in covering formats that a lot of other channels don't cover. And so I feel like it, you know, I don't need to necessarily spend too much time on GOAT because there are plenty of other channels that cover it much better than I would be able to. But I am planning on, like, showing off some fun things in it. And I've got plans for GOAT, so don't worry about that. But yeah, deal with it says, Synchros and Xyz also knocked it out of the park out of the gate. I feel like introducing monsters that were both really strong and interesting, but not overwhelming. And I agree with that, deal with it. I think that, like, Synchros and Xyz, I think, were actually, like, somewhat healthy for game design. And, you know, like, people can definitely disagree with that. Like, having accessible boss monsters like that is definitely not everyone's cup of tea. In fact, that's why a lot of people do not like Link monsters, because they feel like those monsters are too accessible. But I do think that, like, Synchros and Xyz are, like, a good balance for that sort of thing. And yeah, Just Punch says, plus Cyberstein is going to make it all feel the same for quite a while until players in our timeline discover how busted it is and how it goes and everything. Yeah, Just Punch, don't worry. I was part of the Reaper community when that got revived by MBT. And yeah, we found out very quickly that Cyberstein is the best thing that decks can be doing, and it's kind of unfortunate to see how that format's sort of, like, fallen off in activity because, you know, people just don't want to play games like that, and I can't even blame them, right? Like, Cyberstein just trivializes a lot of gameplay, and a lot of people don't find that fun. I think that there are definitely players who do find that fun, and there's a lot of fun jank you can do with Stein in that format. Like, I managed to top a Reaper tournament playing a sort of, like, Wind Last Will deck, where basically I was just using, like, there's a lot of triggers for Last Will in the Wind deck. And so I was just, like, playing that and having fun with it. I managed to make it to top cut of a tournament. But, you know, I do think that I won't really spend much time on Reaper. But yeah, deal with it says, and we don't even talk about pendulums and the heat those cards get, maybe more than links. Yeah, a lot of people hate pendulum because they have the impression that it's like, you know, oh, suddenly I just, you know, summon out 5 monsters at once with my pendulum monsters. And to be fair, there are games where that can happen, right? Like, I'm not saying there aren't. But I feel like a lot of how pendulums sort of were at their beginning was not like that, right? Like cliff forts are completely different from that sort of play style. And you don't really get until like Pepe format until they get like super problematic. But they're still pretty cool. Just Punch says, so since YK Detox seem to be pretty popular, do you think that we could eventually see detox formats that are, say, a 2006 format with Cyberstein banned or Android with no Imperial or? And I could definitely see things like that. I do think, however, that like detox formats, they need to really have like, and also this was a sick play, by the way. I just want to mention it. Snatching the mechanical saves and then duoing the last two cards at hand. Oof, brutal, especially when you hit a Magician of Faith and a Dark Hole. But I do want to say for detox formats, I do feel like before you can actually do one, a format needs to be a certain level of popularity, right? Like the format needs to be, painful choice, really good top deck here, but kind of awkward for Dump Truck since this is the only card getting added to hand. But yeah, detox, it needs to have a certain level of popularity because otherwise it feels kind of weird just like artificially imposing these constraints on a format that's already underexplored, because potentially exploring that format further, you'd find ways to have fun games outside of a detox sort of artificial constraint, right? So I do think that those formats can potentially become popular eventually, but like formats need to be played a lot more to reach that point, in my opinion. There are people who have sort of experimented with other detox things. Like I know Janjo from the Janjo Zone has made like a critter detox deck. And so, that's something that people could play if they want to, if they don't want to have to worry about like Exodia and things like that. But I don't even think like critter is necessarily popular enough to merit like a detox format now. But I mean, that's just my opinion. Like people can play these formats how they want to. But I think like on a broad scale, they won't become popular until a format's reached a certain level of popularity. Pendulum decks were mostly bad. Only Pepe and Pendulum Magicians were good. And also Cleaforts was a stun deck and was mostly tier 1.5. Yeah. And I think this is also why like the Pendulum stuff was like slightly overblown by a lot of people, because like as Bobby Barrow says, like Pendulum decks were not really the best decks in the room, even though they, did see some certain success. Of course, when you get to like Pepe and stuff, they're like broken. And like Pendulum Magicians is also very good. But I feel like a lot of people just sort of jumped ship immediately upon seeing the new mechanic without actually giving it a try. Just Punch says maybe after you've caught up with Modern, and yeah, maybe like after I've caught up with Modern will be quite some time away. I actually don't have any current plans for after I've caught up with Modern, because I don't think I'll reach that point for a very, very long time, given how slowly it's taken me to go through these formats. But I don't really have any intention on like stopping anytime soon. There won't be a point where I'm like, well, yep, that's the end of my journey through Yu-Gi-Oh history, and done with this. I'm planning on just continuing going for as long as I can. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe like after I've caught up with Modern, we'll have to see what the retro Yu-Gi-Oh landscape is like at that point. Deal with it says Pendulums in Master Rule 3 was also heavily busted since they could revive as many as they wanted every turn. And that was the main benefit of Whoa, Rush Recklessly for game. Oh, that was wild in the damage set. Very cool to see. You don't normally see that sort of interaction outside like Yugi Kaibo's reinforcements for game, but very cool to see there. But yeah, and I think that was their main draw in the early Master Rule 3 formats, is that they could just keep getting monsters on board, which were very annoying for a lot of decks to deal with. But I'll be exploring that a lot more when we get to it. And I do think that I think Pendulum decks, it'll just be interesting to revisit them, because I feel like a lot of people have not really revisited the formats around that point in time. And so it'd be cool to sort of evaluate them in a modern lens. Yeah, and Bobby Barrett mentions you could easily pop both scales. And of course, side decking and pendulum decks, you've got, Twin Twisters, I don't think was out yet. But you had a lot of spell and trap mode that you could bring in. Yeah, Burning Abyss was S tier from 2014 and 2016, but people didn't realize it because they value consistent plays over floating effects. And yeah, Burning Abyss is going to be a very fun deck. I can't wait to test it out more when I reach that point. I have a lot of nostalgia for Shadal's, Burning Abyss, all those archetypes, because I feel like they were a really cool sort of point in the game's history. And they definitely shifted or they definitely represented a shift in how archetypes were constructed at that point. Deal with it says, are you going to have videos explaining the different master rules when they come up, or will they be a part of the format guides? My current plan is to make them a part of the format guides, but I also might be changing the layout of the format guides in the future. Because I noticed that the Chaos Guide did not do as well as my other guides. And I think part of it is just because, like, when people see a Chaos Guide, they're like, oh boy, I want to see this. Just tell me, like, the best decks in the format, right? But instead, with my guides, I sort of go through every single card that gets introduced. And a lot of people don't really care about that sort of thing. They just want like the deck list, the best decks, what's out there, and stuff like that. So I might split the guides in the future, have a guide that's more of just a general overview, talking about what decks are potentially the best and what people are playing, and then have another separate video that's going through every new card that gets added and things like that. So that way I sort of fulfill both sides of that sort of thing. But we'll see how that actually manifests in the future. Guides are probably also going to change quite a bit, given that, like, you know, the next couple sets coming out are not too impactful. Like, Ancient Sanctuary is probably the last super impactful set. But we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, Chloe says Soul plays it on every deck for Rush Recklessly, at least for the 2002 formats. And yeah, I mean, Rush Recklessly is a very powerful card, and it can be very unexpected for people. And that could potentially be very good. Yeah, it is a very, very good card in the right circumstances, as we saw there. But also, like, you know, since we're chatting about this, let me know in the comments, like, what you think the guide should be. Like, do you think that I should split them up like that, or do you like them, like, as they are? Just Punch says, those format guides could start focusing on just the new archetype or legacy support when we get to sets that are more archetype focused, but going by influential cards makes sense in early DM. And yeah, that's what they'll eventually be. I kind of try and do that now with a lot of the DM era sets, but it's just like, you know, for instance, in Vampire format, like covering like Archfiends or like Guardians and stuff, like those decks are generally pretty bad. I mean, Archfiends is like decent in Vampire format, but generally people don't really care about those because they're just sort of like a lot worse than the typical stuff. So they're like rogue at best in a lot of cases. So as the packs start changing, I definitely will be changing the format of the guides a bit. And I think that like the next sort of big format will be a perfect time to start changing up the format of that, since things are changing a lot. Deal with it says splitting videos sounds great actually. One going over the new list actual set, plus extras added to the card pool, and the other a more competitive overview of just the decks you should expect to see. And yeah, that's my idea of it as well. And Chloe agrees that splitting is a good idea. Also, 2-hour videos are too long, but making 2 separate 1-hour videos is better. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, 2-hour videos definitely are a lot to sit through, and I'm very grateful that a lot of people do enjoy them. But you know, splitting them up could potentially be better for people watching. But yeah, I will say that, like, in terms of like monetization, I think the 2-hour videos are pretty decent from what I've seen. Like, I'm still pretty new to the monetized side of YouTube, as that only kicked in when I reached 1,000 subscribers. But like having people watch a video for that long does, you know, get me more ad revenue in total. But I want to prioritize what is best for like the viewer experience, right? I don't want to like be like, well, you know, they do better like monetarily, so I'm gonna just make a bunch of videos like this. So yeah, whatever is best for the viewers, I think will be best for the videos. Oh, hello. We've got another player in the chat. Hello, Blah. Welcome to the stream.
Oh, I've been sitting here the entire time while you were going through the chat.
Oh, sorry. I didn't notice. Yeah, I just got wrapped up with the chat that was here.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah, because there've been a lot of exciting comments in the chat there. Deal with it says, I think the going over ban list and new additions to the card pool probably will still be a decently long video. And yeah, that will be a longer video, but I feel like the people who watch that will be into that sort of thing. And the thing with like the guys that have had them so far, and I feel like the people who actually watch through all the way are looking for that sort of content, for going through like every single new card that gets introduced. But a lot of people like who sort of bounce off the guides are not looking for that at all. And I feel like separating it will be a bit better for that sort of thing. But, you know, packs are going to get smaller relatively soon. So, you know, it might not be even as big of an issue there.
Nope. Series 4. When we get to Ancient Sanctuary and the locals, it'll be better to explain what's going on.
Yeah.
But basically, the big packs we've had, the big core boosters, are combinations of different OCG core boosters.
Yep.
Soul the Duelist, the first one that's actually pretty much 1-for-1 from the OCG.
Yeah, and then you get a series of packs that continue to mirror that. And I believe packs continue to mirror that like throughout history, but the packs in the OCG get bigger over time. So that's why.
And we get
nowadays,
exclusives.
Yeah, we also get
we get
exclusives as
TCG
well.
exclusives. Yeah, that'll be a few years after Soul the Duelist,
Yeah.
but until then, it's basically almost a copy, 1-for-1, barring exceptions. Which, when we get there, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, I probably won't spend too much time comparing to the OCG, but I will be going over all the new cards in the new packs that get released, at least the ones that are relevant. Like, I won't cover the normal monsters unless they have, like, some relevant sort of application to the format, which is what I've been doing for the guides in general. But things are looking a bit rough for Dump Truck here. I mean, Soul is lower in life points, but, having a mechanical chaser on field is pretty good there. And which will search out Jinzo, which could telegraph that like Dump Truck's got like Snatch Steal or Change of Heart, which can be kind of rough for Soul. And so Soul's got to think about what to do with that information. Deal that says, gotta love TCG exclusives. They're always so good and relevant. And I mean, sometimes they are. I mean, the Kaijus, those were TCG exclusives, I believe. Also,
yes,
Spiral,
Burning Abyss.
Yep, BA. Those were
Burning
also
Abyss.
TCG.
So you were talking about his S tier earlier.
Yep.
Yeah, that's TCG.
Yep. And so there are a lot of good TCG exclusives, and part of why, like, I think covering the history of the TCG around that time is going to be especially interesting because, the OCG had to wait for TCG power cards to make it over there, at that point. But oh yeah, Cosmo also was TCG exclusive, I believe.
Yes.
Deal with it. Paleo was also exclusive, but not to us. It was exclusive to the Asian English, I believe, TCG. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Blind.
It won't. Korea. Paleo
so
CX, I think we're in Korea.
Yeah. So Paleos were also exclusive, but we eventually got those, and those are pretty fun as well. Yeah, I'm excited for covering the later parts of Yu-Gi-Oh's history as well. Yeah, Clody confirms Paleo was Korea exclusive as well. Snatch Steal on Jinzo there.
But
that's really bad for Dump Truck. This could potentially be the end of the game.
Probably not.
Oh, trading off for a Jinzo of their own.
Yes. Good way to use that.
Yep, indeed. And 2,400 hitting in. Dump Truck's in a really rough spot here. They need some way to deal with that Jinzo, or else they're going to be in a spot of trouble.
He's doomed.
Well,
doomed, I
doomed.
say.
There are plenty of powerful spells in this form that can get them out of it. It's just a tough spot to be in, for sure.
Let me have my fun.
Well, I mean, it's good to balance viewer expectations. But yeah. So, while we're waiting for Dump Truck to do something here, you played a Hayabusa sort of deck. And what was your experience with
that?
Not
really.
Oh.
It was more like an Earth-style rat box deck with Hayabusa and Acts of Despair. It was actually pretty decent. It worked pretty well. I only lost because I couldn't get the Heavy Storm to clear the board. I had Snatch Steal and Premature Burial in hand the entire time. And because he got the 3 MSTs, I couldn't just go for it.
Yeah.
So I got stuck.
That's the end of the game for Dump Truck as well. Now, something that I was sort of like looking for in those games, did the Hayabusa stuff actually come up that much? Because it looked like Hayabusa with Axe only really came up at one point, and it didn't really get to deal much damage there, unfortunately. So do you think that part's worth including in any sort of rat box deck in the future? Or do you think that it's just kind of like cope?
In Imperial?
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was more a matter of space. What could I put there? And Hayabusa and Acts of Despair isn't actually that bad, potentially, if someone could figure out how to make it work. That's a good deal of damage that can get in.
Yeah, but unfortunately,
But
it
in that deck, no, have to be more controlling.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the
Maybe
Hayabusa stuff in Imperial, you can't quite go full OTK. So if you're playing it afterwards, you can like True Nade to pave the way for equipping a bunch of equips to Hayabusa and winning right there. But with Axe being your best
Yeah,
equip, it's a lot harder to do that there in Imperial.
Yeah, it's just more like a big beat stick that can attack twice. That isn't bad or anything. But in that deck, you have to wait until Android before it actually starts becoming more viable because of United We Stand and Mage Power.
Yeah, exactly.
But in Imperial, something else has to occupy those 4 spots.
Yeah. Deal with it asks, what's the difference between Imperial and Android? The main difference is you don't have the beater triangle that Android has. Having Bazoo the Soul Eater, Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, and Gemini Elf in the format really does change a lot. It makes things a lot more aggressive. You also don't have things like Jar of Greed as well. You don't have Skull Lair. So there's a lot of like differences between them. Although not really too many like power card differences. I mean, like Torrential Tribute is in Android. Although people don't really play it as much, people more so play like Trap Hole. I mean, there's experimentation either way, but like Trap Hole allows you to preserve your beater while getting rid of your opponent's beater that would out yours. So yeah, it's there are some subtle differences that lead to a major change in how the formats feel. So I'd say that Imperial feels like sort of a prototype of Android in a way. And I mean, they're both very fun, in my opinion.
One's also able to see treasure. Like, I personally see it as a transition format from the 2002 period into the 2003 period, where the 2002 period is about more slower gameplay, somewhat grindier gameplay. Critter is less grindy than Yugi Kaiba, and Treasure in some ways. It's still kind of grindy.
I don't know. I think Critter is more grindy than Yugi Kaiba.
I'm thinking I reversed that. Yugi Kaiba is a bit less grindy. Yeah, than Critter and Treasure is, but it's still pretty grindy when you're not playing Stall Mill.
It's grindy a lot in like a different way, right? Like what makes Critter and Treasure grindy is you've got double Sang and double Witch, so you constantly have monsters at your disposal. What makes Yugi Kaiba grindy is that like there aren't as many ways to quickly end the game. And that's true for like Critter and Treasure as well. But like, for instance, you'll wind up in situations in Yugi Kaiba where like no one has monsters, and you'll just sort of draw, set, pass, etc. So yeah, it's a bit different. But I agree.
Yeah.
I think that like I've said multiple times I think on stream that I sort of view the DM era as having 3 sub eras, and I think the first sub era ends with Imperial. I think Yugi Kaiba to Imperial is one sort of era where it's that grindier gameplay, as you mentioned. Android to Vampire is marked by sort of more aggressiveness, faster games, and like more interesting interactions in that way. And then after that, you get Chaos and what comes beyond Chaos. And if you're being like super particular about it, you could potentially call Chaos like its own sort of thing, and then call the post-banless stuff a different thing as well. But not all the Chaos monsters are banned with that first ban list, so I do like to lump Chaos with what comes after as well.
Yeah, it's like the second 2003 period is its own thing, but at the same time, you can divide that in half with Android and Joey Pegasus basically being its own block because it's the same pack. Fiber then transitioning from that because of the 2 charities into Yada and Vampire, which has 1 charity, and Mirage. It's similar but different gameplay.
You could, but if you split hairs too much, then it's just why not define them as their formats itself, right? Like, so that's why I like talking about them as sort of more overarching eras of similar gameplay, right? Like, for instance, if you like the gameplay in Android, you'll probably like the gameplay in Yada. And if you like the gameplay in Critter, you'll probably like the gameplay in Treasure,
Yeah.
So,
but Imperial itself it carries a lot of 2002, and it's still grindy in some ways, but
Yep.
It's you start to see where 2003 shows up in like Imperial Order and Jinzo,
Yeah.
and the more aggressiveness that he exploited more in Android format.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like Soul is doing an aggressive Cannon Soldier tribute here. Let's see. Do they know about a tomato in hand, maybe?
We are too busy talking and not
Yeah, I
looking at.
missed some of the gameplay here. Deal with it says if you like the gameplay in Silly Snake, you might just like to discard Silly Snakes a bit too much. Very, very true. Deal with it. Yeah, Silly Snake is one of those subformats we will be getting to eventually, but it's one of the more unlimited formats that don't really see a lot of official play, but they're still fun to talk about as a hypothetical and explore. Oh, okay.
Locals.
Yep, locals. We will have Silly Snake locals at some point as well. MSC coming down, hitting an IO, so IO will be chained to stop the IO from being destroyed, and also shutting down Soul's spells for the next turn. So far, very, very even game thus far.
Indeed.
Soul's thinking about exactly what to do here, and probably thinking about what Danny would set. Now, Magician of Faith did get used up already. There could be another one in Soul's future here, but it might as well just be like a tomato or something like that as well. So Soul's potentially a couple options. They might not even choose to attack into it, prevent Danny from getting like a Sangan or something, but they are indeed going to go for it, hitting into that set. And what will it be? It is a Sangan, so Sangan will get a search there. We'll have to see what Danny searches. What Danny searches will potentially tell Soul, that is, a lot about what is in their hand. Deal with it says, I was like top 3 craziest cards they printed in this era, TBH, because it beats all the crazy spells they printed. Honestly, I think IO is one of the craziest cards they printed, like, period, like in the game's history. He's come back to Modern, like, with an errata to make it worse, and it still saw enough, like, high-level play and enough degenerate gameplay to get itself banned again. So
It did take a couple of years for the game to get back to a more spell-oriented format.
sure,
But when it did, yeah.
even in formats where it was like a little bit more underwhelming, there were like ways that you could abuse it and be really annoying with it, like True Draco using IO,
Yeah.
which is such a powerful combo.
It's good there.
Yeah.
And really good against Sky Striker, but honestly,
I mean,
that's all it really did.
Like, the idea is in decks that can run order is insane. And in decks that, can't, it doesn't really matter. We don't really need to talk about it there. But, like, the decks that can run it are the problem, right? So
yeah, it eventually did become a big problem.
Yeah.
Though hilariously, they banned it just before the pile.
Yeah. Before the adventure.
And all those spells.
Makes
you wonder if they banned it just a bit too early.
They might have.
They could have waited. Yes.
And it looks like Soul is firing a preemptive Waboku on the change of heart there, playing around if Danny tributes off a Jinzo, and that is indeed what is going to happen. So very heads-up play on Soul's part. And it's something that, like, it definitely is something that takes practice in Imperial format to actually have that read and go for that play. So very, very smart play. Danny's just going to tribute out Jinzo, pass. Deal with it says, at this point, I'm hoping it tries to come back again with another errata and gets banned a third time. That would be very, very funny. I'm not sure what the new errata would be. Maybe just negate all spells for a turn. Who knows? That would still probably be powerful enough to be insane. Just Punch says, for a while, even anti-spell fragrance was super good, which is like a less powerful Imperial Order. That's very true. Anti-spell fragrance also just is really, really good against pendulum decks. And I mean, some would say like degenerately so. And I kind of agree with them. When you have a card that like basically shuts down an entire style of gameplay, it can be a bit degenerate and a bit like feels bad. If you are like a pendulum player, for instance. But different people
unfortunately, pendulum players are considered and so anti-spell fragrance can stay forever.
Yep, that's
joking,
unfortunately how the TCG views him. I think even the OCG views him that way a little bit.
But not enough to keep Electromite banned.
That's true. and what the Electrum might doing over in the OCG now. No.
Supreme King Pendulum Magicians are a solid deck, but Pendulum decks as a whole aren't that great.
Yeah.
Some strong
And
decks, but not really.
And when you say solid, do you mean topping events, or do you mean like just
It was topping events. It was topping events.
At what point in time?
It's a new format. It's a new format, and I can't tell you immediately off the top of my head how they're doing now.
Okay, because from metagame coverage, I haven't really seen them doing that. I haven't seen them.
Yeah, it was last format. Yeah, it was last format for sure. Right now, it's just Fire King Revival.
Yeah. Well, Fire King is the hot new thing. Pun intended. And honestly, I think it's always very cool when a structure deck strategy becomes the meta. Bob the Builder says Jinzo is so awesome. And yeah, Jinzo is a very, very cool card. And I feel like until you play these damn era formats, you don't really realize how powerful this card was, and how powerful it continues to be throughout the DM era. Really, really good card. And I mean, I really like it. I've grown to love it even more playing these formats. Just super cool to see. Soul's in a tough spot, though. Danny has 3,500 damage staring him down. Not really much they can do here with a Jinzo on field, and Mechanical Chaser will likely be the end of the game. I can't really imagine what Soul's got here to change things unless they've got like Offering to the Doom. I'm not even sure if Offering to the Doom is out in this format. But
nope. Yeah. Next format.
Yeah.
There's no real response to Jinzo.
Yeah.
Other than monster removal and Solemn Judgment or Horn of Heaven.
Yeah, but nope, it's just Call the Haunted there. Won't be able to use that with Jinzo on field. I'm not sure if they're having a brain fart here or if they're just like I don't know what's going on here. That's not a legal play, so I mean, I'm just gonna message them just in case. Okay, they figured it out. Yeah. Yep, and that's the end of the game. DL with it says this format is we love fire, all the fire, and yeah, that's Fire Kings for you. Bonfire is now at a slightly more reasonable price, although it's still very expensive, unfortunately. But yeah, Jinzo is like a card out of time. It's almost on par with the Monarchs, but years earlier. Yeah, only 500 defense off from the Monarch stat line. Justice Punch said, I even have a Jinzo face mask from the COVID era, and it's pretty easy to make a Jinzo cosplay from there. That's really, really cool. It must be awesome just walking out in public with the, like, you know, face guard that Jinzo has. Such a cool design on a monster. Oh, we're going into siding. Yeah, Soul65 said, Jinzo has an effect all GG1.
While we're at it, might as well mention it. The tournament is basically now in its top 8.
Yeah,
we have our competitors
in top 8. Very exciting. I will be streaming the finals of that when they do happen. Really excited to show off the finals. And also, I'm excited to see the deck breakdowns for the coverage of it. I will be making a video on that when the coverage is up, and it should be a lot of fun. So excited to see where this format goes, and I do know that there are people who really like this Chaos format, and they are planning on, you know, having tournament be a regular thing, or at least more of a regular thing than they have been in the past. So, you know, look forward to those. If you like Chaos format, then definitely keep an eye out. Join the Discord server, and also join the Chaos Corner Discord server as well, which you can find a link to in the Why Do You Go From Zero Discord server.
I can just post it here as well.
Yeah, you can post it in the YouTube chat. You know, I don't know if YouTube will allow it to stand because it often just auto flags links like that. But you know,
let's find out.
Deal with it says it's nice to see an anime boss monster actually being good.
Copy and paste that.
I don't see it pop up in the comments yet, but we'll see if it actually makes it through. But yeah. I agree. Like, it's always cool to see when something that's good in the anime actually translates to the actual game. it's not necessarily always a necessity. Like you can still have fun, sort of out there anime strategies that you sort of try and build to get to work in the TCG. But it's cool when it actually does translate well. Um, yeah, it's kind of like
Mhm.
when a cool
Lovely.
when a monster with a cool lore in Magic actually turns out to be very good as well.
Huh.
The same sort of fun feeling in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think the link went through in the comments there.
I see the link.
Yeah, you were
So
the one that posted
I
it.
guess on
So it's yeah.
yes.
Um, Bob the Builder says my only goal in life is to program all of the holograms in Blue Eyes format, and then each format after in for augmented reality, create a helmet to distribute the weight / haptic feedback suit. That would be really really cool, Bob the Builder. That would be awesome. If you ever do that, like I would I would buy that. Like that is insanely cool. And a childhood dream come true for sure. Dale that says Esperobo would be proud. Just Punch says OG Fire Kings is my favorite archetype of all time. It might have got me to try modern, but then I saw the price tag of the engine that enables it, and I decided not to bother. I think there are some like Fire King decks you can build on a budget that sort of don't do the whole engine, like with the bonfires and things like that. But yeah, if you want to play like optimal, like quote unquote optimal Fire Kings, then yeah, you need to shell out a fair amount of cash, which is quite unfortunate. But you know, it might be fun. Like when that eventually does become a retro format, maybe the price will go down for bonfire and stuff. Um, Bob Builder says plus foam pit on each end of a field in a giant parking lot with pull line for when opponent's life points hit 0. That'd be really cool. Then we have to add voice command, and we have brought Yu-Gi-Oh to life. Yeah, that'd be super awesome. That's just like childhood dreams coming true. You could probably honestly have that be like sort of like a theme park sort of thing where people like go to visit and play there. That'd be cool to see. But yeah, bug popping the rat there. One of the reasons why bug is so powerful in this format is it does pop the recruiters like rat and tomato. So that's why it does still see play. Dane's going to set another monster pass back to Soul. Now, every turn the Soul keeps up that IO, they are bleeding out life points. And, so they do have to decide, like, do I keep this order up? Do I let it go? What do I do with this thing? Because Danny's life points are not going down. And life points do indeed matter in a format like this. A deal that says you can build functioning Yu-Gi-Oh decks for less than $15, but you'll immediately be outclassed by people that do run the staple cards that cost like $80. And yeah, that is one of the sort of issues with modern deck building. I think like it can be pricey in that way. I do think that like a lot of the staples do carry over from format to format. For instance, if you buy a playset of Ash, right, like you can use that in a variety of decks in a variety of formats. But in order to actually like acquire all those playsets, it does take some time. And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like retro formats. Like the retro format scene is a lot more budget friendly. And I personally feel like a game like this shouldn't have to cost that much. But yeah. Bob Builder says, isn't it crazy how the comic book started? They started with cards on the table, and the cards came to life. We are in the same era now. Some of these holograms have been programmed already. We just need more awareness in the community. Yeah, I mean, I remember when the virtual reality stuff with Yu-Gi-Oh came out, where it was like, the video that went viral of the guy just doing like, I activate Pot of Greed to draw 2 cards, and then I activate Pot of Greed to draw 2 cards, and you just keep doing it. And it was very funny. So hopefully we can get more of that to take off because it would be really cool to see. Yeah, it looks like Soul sent 4 and a face down. It shouldn't be face down. I assume it's a confiscation there if they're sending the other 3 hand rips. Just Pump says augmented reality for YGO seems like it shouldn't be too hard. Have the physical cards be like generic pieces without the info, and have all the card data stored on the electronics. Yeah, and I think that's how it was, like lore wise, how it went in the anime in the manga. But yeah. So it looks like the 3 hand rips plus Reborn plus Sangan. I feel like if you're Danny, you just give them Sangan here, right? That seems like the least objectionable of these cards, unless you have like IO set of your own. But yeah. Do the Sangan. I mean, Soul can search out a Magician of Faith, which would be unfortunate for you. But at least that takes a couple turns and is telegraphed. Let's see what we got going on here. Change of Heart on the set. This can be a potential big damage swing here. Depending on what that set card is. It's a tomato. So, yeah, this will be quite a bit of damage if Daniel lets this go through. Bob the Builder says, that would be awesome. First, though, we got to do it all digitally. In like 20 years, we can add card recognition, and we have straight up entered the anime. Yeah, it's cool to see technology moving at such a pace where those sorts of talks are not like in the realm of science fiction alone. Like, it could potentially be a thing, like, coming up soon. And by soon, I mean, like, relatively. But, yeah, it's very, 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 very cool to see us approaching that era. Todd Bobbitt says, let's have Shadow Duel, lol. And yeah, that's what we're getting to. But I think there was a bit of feedback on your end, like not feedback, but like.
Oh, that's because I was talking, but I wasn't talking in the mic.
Oh, okay.
Mic was up.
Okay.
You were hearing me talk, just not properly.
Yeah, you're on a bit loud right now. From my hearing, so
down better.
It's still a little bit loud, but I mean, I don't know. Comments, how's it sound? If any comments want to talk about the audio quality, if there's anything we can change here. But yeah, Raigeki there is pretty good. I mean, Soul does get a search off the Sangan, so they could potentially search out like a Magician of Faith, which would be kind of rough. Top Bob is bringing Bakura's Ring to the Shadow Duel. That'd be a bit scary. But yeah, I just got to bring my Millennium Eye and just read your mind. And then, although I think the Millennium Ring did help prevent the mind reading, I think. I can't quite remember. Bob Miller said, a giant Exodia the size of a football stadium just looking at you, and then the opponent declares an attack. You will freak out if you're wearing a haptic feedback suit, Lamau. And that would definitely be very funny and very cool.
Okay. Tributing for the tomato?
Yep. And I
Not
like this
sure.
play.
A bit. Only because Change of Heart is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
But
and
still, tributing your first tomato is kind of not the best thing you could do, but it's fine.
I think it's fine, yeah.
Oh,
MST
there's the
hitting
MST.
The call, very good hit there. If Danny had saved the call for later, then they could have chained call to the MST, brought back Jinzo, and gotten value off that. But unfortunately, they set the call just to sort of play around if Soul had Revival for the Jinzo, and it came back to bite them.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Snatch Steal is going to be pretty rough for the Jinzo there. And if Soul has, they do not have another.
It's not game,
chaser, but this is still really good. I mean, gets in for 3,500.
Oh,
Danny's in a rough spot.
Damage step.
Oh yeah, it could potentially be a Rush Recklessly coming down here, but
never mind.
Rip. We don't get to see that twice in the stream. It looks like. Still a very good position for Soul to be in. And Danny will gain 1,000 here, but it might not matter in the end.
Yes. No, if he has MST though.
Yeah.
Then he's in a decent spot.
Yeah. But you need that sort of thing. You could have like monster removal as well. But then Danny isn't really the one benefiting from it if he activates Dark Hole here, right? Because then Soul gets searched too. So bit of a
there is a path. There is a path to victory here, but it's unlikely Danny has the cards he needs.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing about like Imperial. There's very often a path to victory in some way, but you need a very specific combination of cards to do it a lot of the time. Bob the Builder says, Snatch Steal and Jinzo have always been magnets no matter what format they find each other in, lol. And yeah, it's very true. I mean, snatching a Jinzo, iconic play. You often do save the snatch for the big tribute monsters, so it makes sense that Jinzo would be a classic Snatch Steal target there. But let's see what Danny's going to do here. I mean, honestly, even like setting something like a tomato or something, not bad. Because you stave off death.
Let's see what this is
from the snatch. But yeah, it really depends on what Soul's got. If Soul's got like a Raigeki, then that would potentially be the end of the game. If they've got Dark Hole, probably also the end of the game. Because they can Dark Hole their Witch, search out Mechanical Chaser.
A Nobleman is the end of the
Yep,
game.
exactly. Nobleman also ends it. So a lot of potential ways for
If-
Soul to win here and bring it to a game 3. Dream Clown coming down, and depending on what this set is, this might also be the end of the game. Tagging in to a Tomato, so that's going to be very good for Danny. But Soul did
Well
order
done.
this attack correctly because Dream Clown can hit over the defense of Tomato, and so Danny will be taking damage from the Jinzo attack here.
Yes. But now he'll float more into his deck for a Witch or Sangan if
Yep, but
Jinzo
Soul can then
attacks.
clear that Witch or Sangan if they so choose. So, looks like they're attacking the Witch in to the Tomato there instead of going to
I
the
see what's
Jinzo
going
play.
on.
I'm not really
Soul
sure
has enough.
I like this play here. I get why he's doing it, but oh, searching out Tomato. I thought he was going to search out a Cannon Soldier there. I just don't really like that play. I feel like you can just save the Witch. But I guess having Tomato isn't bad. It's just kind of awkward, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what Danny searches off that Tomato there. What's he going to grab? Can't be another Tomato because all 3 Tomatoes are in grave. Has to be like a Cannon Soldier, a Witch, a Sangan. Actually, he used up Witch. He's not used up Witch yet, so could potentially be the Witch.
No. This is why I was leery about attributing the Mystic Tomato earlier. A major reason. He had Jinzo in hand. He could have floated into a Witch or Sangan, then tributed that off to add something from deck and keep it going.
Because he had the call too. So he wanted to get Jinzo
it
on
was-
field to then bring it back with call if it got cleared.
That's why I said
However,
it.
he got too
with change.
Yeah, he got too aggressive with setting the call when the Jinzo was on field. And Snatch Steal was really the like if the call hadn't gotten MST'd, Snatch Steal was really the only thing that would keep Jinzo on field here. In a way that would.
That's why it was okay. Just didn't really like it that much because of that risk.
But I don't think it was a bad play by any means. I think it made sense from what Danny knew at the time and what he had. So I don't looks like a Germ coming down here. Last will. Okay, this explains why the Witch will attack to the Tomato because Cannon Soldier will be the end of the game here.
GG.
So yep, that will be the end of the game. And yeah, so there's the Cannon Soldiers. That explains it. Because I was like, Cannon Soldier should end the game soon. But yeah. Tom Bob said, Yu-Gi-Oh! From Zero, tell Duelist hi. Tell that Turkey I'm waiting for him on Duelist Nexus. Lol.
He's talking to me, not to him. I'm not him.
Okay.
Stop.
So it seems like you're wanted on Duelist Nexus. So at your soonest convenient time, please head on over to Duelist Nexus and face Tom Bobbitt in a shadow duel. Yeah. We're in game 3 now. Very intense games so far. Danny is going to be able to go first here, though, so that could potentially swing the game in their favor. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, going first in this format isn't necessarily the end of the world. It's, you can have powerful hand rips and stuff, but you're not necessarily going to win the game on the spot there. But it is still very strong. So Danny is going to go first here. Will they draw the hand rips in the opener? That's the question. And it looks like
top deck.
The suspense. The suspense. Will they have the hand rips or not? If they do, they might be. Yep, it looks like they're going to go for the duo here. So that at least they've got at least one hand rip here. And in this format, if you've got duo plus like a forceful or a coffee, always go duo first and then do forceful coffee if you're on turn 1. Because there's no Sinister Serpent in this format, so you don't need to worry about that. And you want to potentially hit something good randomly with duo before taking something out with your coffee or your forceful. So, yeah. So that was the correct order.
Guaranteeing
things.
You're guaranteeing something. There's a combo gone with Tomato and Last Will.
Yep. The last will being pitched might just mean it's the weakest card in their hand. It might also just mean
Yeah,
that they
with
don't have any ways to turn it on at this point. But we'll have to see what.
especially with
Danny sends
Tomato
out Painful.
gone.
Yeah. Well, that would be potentially why they don't have much to have in there to trigger it. But yeah, Painful's
All
going to
right.
send a Forceful, probably a Comfy as well. And then there will just be
And
3 other
then
cards to send. Yeah,
whatever he
Todd
decides.
Bobbitt.
Oh, Jinzo.
Yep, Jinzo is a pretty standard card to send as well. It either winds up in grave or it winds up in hand where you can potentially tribute it out next turn. Todd Bobbitt says this is a good duel. And I agree. I think this duel has been pretty exciting so far. A good game to end the locals on. I know Imperial isn't the most popular format, but I think these games do show why it is still pretty decent. But yeah, they're going to send Fisher as well. So they got 3 engraved so far because Duo was activated before. So now it's just the remaining 2 that they got to send. They're going to send a Bug. And now the question is, do they have Comfy left in deck or do they have it in hand? Because I feel like if it's left in deck, you want to send it off the Painful. But if it's not, then, ooh, okay. Might mean that they've got Comfy in hand. Might mean that they're not playing Comfy at all. But we'll have to see what happens here.
At least after siding.
Yeah. I feel like if you're going first, you want to play all 3 hand rips just to increase your odds of opening a hand rip going first, because that's very, very powerful. But, you know, I've sided out the hand rips in later formats at different points in the game. So definitely something that people try and do. But it looks like they're just going to somewhat pass back.
In this period, the Trinity's not so bad. You can't come back from getting hand ripped. It's like later on they get ridiculous.
By Trinity, you mean the 3 hand rips?
Yes, there's 3 sacred treasures, yada yada.
Yeah, the Trinity later on in the game's history takes on a very different.
The Unholy Trinity. So, yeah, it's called the Unholy Trinity.
Yeah,
I was just shorthanding it.
Yeah, but in the TCG, a lot of people use Trinity as Pot, Graceful, and Duo. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, Graceful is not out in this format. So don't have to worry about Graceful. But yeah, the 3 hand rips are definitely, not the worst thing in the world, although they are still very powerful. Forceful coming down here to rip a card out of Danny's hand. And we'll have to see what exactly Soul takes here.
Yes. Sentry, very good at looking through the hand and putting a card away, but it's also really good at forcing the opponent to get back a card into their deck. Like Painful Choice is strength, is thinning the deck.
Well,
by forcing a card back, it makes it a little bit harder on the opponent, especially if they're putting back. Honestly, like Jinzo, yes.
Honestly, Jinzo is really the only card I think that super applies to, because most cards in this format, you're fine drawing. It's not really like later, unless you're playing like a super heavy combo deck, then maybe that's a bit different. But if you're playing a standard like more good stuff style deck, then you don't really care too much about getting a card put back into the deck.
He knows there's no Storm or MST.
Yep. Also, the Jinzo's been shuffled back.
All setting.
Why he, why he felt fine setting all these. That's why he sent back the Jinzo in the first place, probably.
Yes.
Now the question is what Danny is going to do here. And this was, I think, also smart on Soul's part, because it plays around if the set is Magician of Faith, adding back like a Forceful or a Duo. So I think this was a pretty good play on Soul's part, and Danny's going to summon out a Sangan here. I honestly feel like you should summon out Witch in this situation, because if it gets destroyed, then you search out Jinzo, and then you make Soul have a pretty rough time. But Sangan isn't bad, so I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But
unfortunately, the Danny's hand wasn't exactly the best. Well, there's another Painful.
So
yeah, already Witch, but he also has his first Tomato, so he only has a second Sangan left and the Cannon Soldier left in deck to get into.
Yeah, which is more reason why I think the Witch should have probably been summoned here. But Sangan again is not bad.
No.
But what is Soul going to send off this Painful? Very interesting decision here.
Okay.
Now, they could actually have a Call of the Haunted set, which would be really rough for Danny here because that could guarantee a Jinzo.
Yes. The potential option would be the rest of the hand rips, if he has them. Probably does if he kept Sentry. Maybe knock like that. Jinzo, Sangan, or Witch for Call the Haunted, etc.
Honestly, personally, I think it might just be you send a bunch of monsters plus Jinzo if you've got Call of the Haunted, because then you guarantee that you. Actually, you just have to send a Jinzo and 2 monsters, and then you're good.
Yes.
So you could send Jinzo 2 Sangans, and then you'll be set for if you've got a call set. But it looks like they probably don't have the call if they're sending these.
Yes. All right. There's Sangan.
Yeah. Actually, I guess you could
He
only
only
send
needs
2 if you send Sangan
2.
and Jinzo, then that's good enough.
And sending 3 spells or traps means you'll draw into a monster later.
Yep. But it looks like that's a snatch. So maybe no Jinzo
this
getting sent because he wants all the draws or all the cards here to be live. But Last Will is not live, unfortunately. So that seems like
unless
pretty easy.
He calls into Tomato.
Yeah, he could do that. He could also call into the Sangan, crash the Sangan, and then use Will that way. But honestly, that's a much lower impact Will than I feel like you'd want to have. I feel like just going for the Jinzo here would probably be a little bit better. But I don't necessarily think this play is bad. It's just I feel like you probably want to get the Jinzo out of the deck, out of the top decks. But if you've got traps in your back row, you also don't necessarily want to shut those off. So bit interesting here. They're going to fire the Last Will, so that does telegraph a Call of the Haunted coming here.
Or a premature burial.
Oh yeah, or premature.
Yep, there it is. Yep.
But yeah, so they're gonna bring out the Sangan, crash the Sangan into Danny's Sangan, get a search off that, and also get a monster out on field. So this is ultimately a pretty good play on Soul's part. Yeah, it's just maybe not what I would have gone for, but I don't think it's bad. I just think it's different.
Oh. Yeah, it is
Sangan
different.
We'll get a search.
It just depends on if this was the most optimal thing to do.
Yeah.
Hard to say with our lack of knowledge.
Yeah, because we don't know what Soul's got in the back row. And so, yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
They could have also potentially sided out Jinzo from the deck. We don't know that either. But very interesting turn here. And it could be potentially a pretty good one for Soul. Now, Danny does search first here because they are not turn player. So Sangan will allow them to search first. They're going to grab a Cannon Soldier, which is one of the few cards that they don't already have in hand in terms of monsters Sangan can search. And Soul's going to search out a Witch of the Black Forest. Now, Last Will be able to trigger because, in this format, Last Will is like its full power form. And they're going to bring out... What are they going to bring out? Could potentially bring out like a Tomato. They could bring out Dream Clown, just say, you got to flip up that faith now, or else I'll switch the clown to defense, pop your monster. There are a couple different things they could do. They're going to search out a rat here. Rat attacking into the set. The set is a bug, so that will pop the rat.
Oh.
So quite unfortunate there for Soul, but ultimately not the worst thing in the world, because they do have the Witch in hand. And they're going to normal summon the Witch there in main 2 and just pass back to Danny. A pretty formidable setup, despite how it may seem. So Danny now knows some cards that they don't have to worry about later on in the game, namely Snatch Steal, Comfy. And Soul might not even have Duo in the deck, given they didn't send it off the Painful. But Danny's just going to set one, set another, and pass back to Soul. That's a little bit risky, given that we know one knock is engraved, but they could have another knock. But Danny could also figure, if they had the knock, they would have used it up beforehand on the bug. So, I think this is also fine. You don't necessarily, when playing these games, you don't necessarily want to play around like everything that your opponent might have. You just want to play around what's most likely that they have. And so I think this was a good play on Danny's part. So, Witch switching defense, set of a monster here could be like a Faith or something. Get back something good. Bit of a
unlike Soul, Danny basically has no idea what he's playing other than Witch.
And that's the power of the hand rips, giving you information. Yeah, while we're on the topic of hand rips, what do people think is the best hand rip in this format? I personally think Forceful Sentry. But I think in my opinion, the ranking of the hand rips goes Forceful Sentry best, Confiscation second best, Duo worst. Not to say Duo is a bad card, but I do think that Duo is the least good of the hand rips.
Correct, actually,
Yeah.
for various reasons.
Yep. And I do think that hand knowledge is more important in most cases than the card advantage. Card advantage is still pretty good, so that's why Duo is still a pretty decent card. But yeah, Faith will get flipped up here. They could add like a Forceful. They could add a Duo just to deal with the Witch there. They're going to add a Fisher. It's kind of interesting pick, valuing removal over a way to clear what the Witch searches out. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll have to see what they've got because we don't know what their newer draws are in hand. What are they going to summon out? Let's see it.
Hard to say.
Danny's thinking. They're thinking about what
We
Soul
know.
might have.
Yeah.
Gonna bring
We
out
know
BT
one
Maiden.
of the cards that just been dropped. Yeah, that'll
Tomato's
clear the
going to
Witch.
Attack over the Witch. I guess this is fine. Like I'm not the hugest fan of this play. I don't think you need to clear the Witch yet. I think you can bring out Witch and just attack into the set, honestly.
It
Because it also plays
gives
around,
him
like, Mirror
Jinzo,
Force.
basically.
No, but it plays around like Mirror Force. And yeah, now Soul can search out Jinzo if they want to. Like, I feel like this was not the best play with the tomato, but I don't know. I think it's not terrible. It's just not what I would do. Especially with that Magician of Faith and not doing anything for you here and clearing your opponent's monster. So,
Speaking of,
yep, Jinzo is getting searched out, so Soul will likely tribute over that set next turn. Bring out the Jinzo. Now, Danny does have the Fisher to deal with that. But if the set is like a Magician of Faith, they can always add back the Forceful or the Comfy, get that Fisher out of their hand, and make this kind of annoying for Danny here. But yeah, we'll have to see how the game develops from this point. I think it's relatively an even match. It's more of like an information war at this point. They're going to go for an MST blind on a set. They're going to hit an MST of Soul's Own. Not ideal, not necessarily the card you'd want to hit there, especially when you're passing back to Soul. So we'll have to see what Soul does.
the memes.
Well, yeah, MST on MST is always funny to see, but not necessarily what Danny wants in this situation for sure.
Nope. Now, whether he tributes Jinzo or not will depend on whatever that set is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, Morphing Jar. Okay,
that's
interesting. Choosing not to commit any cards in hand to field, but hitting a Jinzo and Tomato out of the hand. And Fisher will go. Witch will go. And Reborn. Oh, Reborn, really strong card there. But unfortunately, that is out of Danny Droid's control for the rest of the game there. And Danny will get to draw 5 new ones. But this is
now
rough. Pot of Greed here as well, drawing even more. Now, again,
players are
now.
Both players are now. Sorry, we're just stepping on each other's feet. It's not good.
Now, as I mentioned, in Imperial format, there are like always sorts of combos of cards that can end the game very quickly. But I feel like with 7,000 life points, Danny is relatively safe here. It looks like Soul probably has a Fisher in hand because that's the main reason why you do this play, attacking over the Faith there.
Probably.
Danny will take 900. They could also have like a Rush Recklessly or something to bait out an attack, but that actually plays kind of poorly with the Morphing Jar in face-up attack position here because the Mystic Tomato can attack into it. If Soul does Rush Recklessly the Morphing Jar, then Danny gets to search off the Tomato. So Mirror Force could also be an option for sure. Pot of Greed coming down here. Will there be an IO?
Both of them drawing it.
That?
Yeah. Possible, but both of them drawing.
Soul's saying in standby. What's going on in standby?
A bit of a rush.
Woboku. Okay.
So that's a good
Danny's own. So yeah, and I think that's fine. Like normally when things happen after another actions happen, it's a bit awkward to sort of reconcile. But this isn't something that would necessarily happen. Like for instance, Soul could have chained Woboku to the pot, right? So it didn't matter there. in effectiveness. But yeah, it's pretty good draws from Danny's end. Now, this is a bit awkward for Danny as well because if they do attack into, or a bit awkward for Soul, that is, because if Soul does okay, the Woku's still
there's
active. Yeah.
the attack in Wabaku.
Yep.
We just saw it.
Yeah. And Danny's going to
All
set
right,
one.
Luis.
Give Soul a choice. Do you switch the Dream Clan defense to pop the tomato, or do you pop the set? That's the question. I mean, Pot of Greed is engraved there, so bit of an iffy decision here. Of course, Soul could have like a Fisher or
Yes.
something to deal with the tomato as well.
Or a knock and then Dream Clown.
Yep, Knock would also deal with the set, and then they could Dream Clown the tomato. So a lot of different options here. We'll have to see what Soul chooses and what they have access to here. They're going to bring out a giant rat here. That will be able to crash into the tomato, make a little recruiter war there. Unfortunately, one rat is engraved for Soul, and no tomatoes are engraved for Danny. But it looks like they're going to switch the Dream Clown of Defense, pop the tomato, and they're just going to attack into that set. Unless they've got another way to remove the set. Nope, they're just going to attack in. And looks like Morphing Jar attacking into the set. And it's a Magician of Faith. So very, very good read on Soul's part. Unfortunately for them, this will be able to get Danny back a powerful spell. Now, you could go for something like Reborn. You could go for something like Pot. There is definitely a choice there. Reborn can get back a Jinzo, which would shut down Soul's traps, insulate your own plays. Pot would be able to draw you more cards, potentially draw you into your power cards. So there's definitely a decision there, and Danny will indeed pick Pot. I think that is ultimately the better choice in this situation, but it definitely is an interesting one. And Rat's going to hit in for 14, dropping Danny down to 4,700. And it's looking pretty bad for Danny right now, but you got to keep in mind, Danny has 6 cards in hand plus a Pot. So, it could definitely turn around in Danny's favor here. We just got to see.
Probably will.
Yep, Pot coming down, hitting the field. So letting that go through. No IO for the Pot, which, they let the Pot go through last turn as well. So it's very likely that set is not IO. But they could just be, slow rolling, just holding it for a long time. But you probably want to fire it at some point.
Possibly.
But what will Danny do here? That's the question on everyone's minds. That's the $1 million question of the hour. And we'll have to see what they do. So what's been used up? Just Pot and Reborn, plus Forceful and Duo of the power spells. So Dark Hole still exists in the deck. Raigeki still exists in the deck. Yeah, Painful Painful is a very strong card, but I don't classify it as one of the power spells in the format, right? Because it gets you to your other power cards. It doesn't do graveyard setup like it will in Chaos format.
Oh, there's Chaser.
Yep, Mechanical Chaser coming down here and probably hitting into the jar, I'd assume. Maybe hitting into the Dream Clown. But, Dream Clown can't pop something next turn. So there's the choice there. It looks like they're going to hit into the Clown, just prioritizing removing that. Removing the potential removal. But, I don't know. I feel like you could have potentially just attacked in the jar, prioritized damage there. But, I don't know. It's a bit interesting to think about. Now the question is, what's Danny gonna do now? Because they got 7 cards in hand, so they got to commit something to.
Has this.
There it is. And now, discard, but yeah, it's better to set.
Especially in this format.
Yeah,
it's plenty of formats, but this isn't credit where you can just discard a Thunder Dragon.
Yeah. Although you could potentially play Thunder Dragon in this format, it just doesn't really have any point to it in this format. Beyond just pure deck thinning. But
you'll see it in Exodia, but not much else.
Yeah, and Exodia isn't really played in this format because of the hand rips. But
it is. Backup Soldier exists.
Yeah, but when I say it isn't played much, I mean it's not played competitively. And because any deck could be played, right? You could play Gate Guardian in this format, but when I say it isn't played much, I mean people aren't really playing it competitively. But Soul is in the driver's seat here. Kind of a scary situation for Danny Droid to be in. And there are plenty of ways for Soul to just win the game out of nowhere potentially here.
Yes. That's the difference. why I call this a transitional format. It's a lot like Treasure. We've seen a lot of Treasure-like gameplay with minor differences, but at any point, this game could just end.
Yep. I would argue that that's the case also in Treasure as well. Like, as we said, there's sort of different eras of the game's history, right? Like Yu Kaiba to Imperial is one era, and it's classified by a very grindy gameplay. But while they may all be classified by a similar grindy gameplay, it doesn't mean that the exact pace of the formats is exactly the same. So Imperial is definitely quicker than Treasure, but I do think that it still shares that grindy quality. And Soul's going to give a big think here. Now, Jinzo is engraved. If they've got like Monster Reborn, Premature Burial, etc., you can potentially try and get that back. Now, the risk is if Danny has an Imperial Order. Soul's only used up one MST, though, so they could easily have another MST in hand to deal with that. But it looks like they're just going to go to battle phase, try and attack the rat into the mechanical chaser, I assume.
Probably going for Rush Recklessly.
Yep, exactly. That's what I was going to say. And if Danny wants to stop the Rush Recklessly with Imperial Order, they have to do that before the damage step. And that isn't even the worst thing for Soul here, as then Soul gets another search off the rat. So it looks like it will be
more
fine.
deck thinning.
Yeah, it's deck thinning as well. And then in the damage step, that's like in general, if someone gives the thumbs up, they mean it's okay to go to damage step.
The last card from the beginning of the game.
Yep. It is indeed Rush Recklessly there. And that will get the rat over the mechanical chaser. Luckily for Danny, though, this isn't really too much damage overall. If Soul wants to keep the Morphing Jar in attack, then it's just 950 damage. Which, they can afford to take at this point. Like, Cannon Soldier is a looming threat, but at 3750, you've still got some time.
The Cannon Soldier's in hand. We know that much, I think.
Didn't it get
Unless
discarded?
someone's... Never mind.
No.
I got
discarded off.
Yeah, I thought it was in Soul's hand. Sorry.
Oh, no, I don't think we know anything in Soul's
hand,
because Soul isn't searched since the Morphing Jar.
Yeah.
Soul's going to set 2 more, go to end phase, and reduce that rat's attack to 1400. Now, if you're Danny, you might have the read that they made such an aggressive play like that because they've also got Imperial Order set on field there. And they wanted to use it Rush Recklessly before the order had to be established. So, yeah, very interesting. Also, the Morphing Jar is still an attack. Might just be because they're prioritizing for damage. But it could also...
He attacked with the Morphing Jar.
No, I know. But Soul made the choice to attack with the Morphing Jar, is what I'm saying. Like,
yes,
Soul could have switched it to defense, but they feel confident enough to keep it in attack here. Now, it could be because they're at 7,000 life points. Could also mean that they've got, like, a Mirror Force set as well to protect the jar and the rat. But, these are all things that Danny has to consider here when making their next play. They're thinking. Maybe they're thinking about, do I use up a Dark Hole or Raigeki on this board? Is it worth it? Because, you could potentially just clear the Morphing Jar on your own, then use a Fissure on the rat. It looks like they're just going to set 2 and pass back to Soul. And
he
Soul
might not have the third MST to risk it if he's reading IO.
Yep, that could be as well. And it looks like Soul's thinking an end phase here, maybe thinking about an MST. But in this format, it is important to note, MSTs can be used the turn that they are set. So,
correct.
If Danny set an MST there, Soul doesn't necessarily want to MST that set, because it could be an MST of Danny's own. But, again, Danny's used up 2 MSTs already, so maybe not the most likely thing in the world, but it is a possibility for sure.
Yes. And Soul has used up 1, so he's more likely to have 1 in hand or
on field
set.
It's not necessarily the most risky set, because if your opponent, goes for a heavy on it, it's basically serving its purpose because they'll have to clear their own back row to do so. So,
yes,
and yeah, MST on the new back row indeed.
We guessed it.
Important enough to go for. It looks like it was in the IO set. So, I mean, honestly, this may sound crazy. I don't think that was really a high impact MST there, because the MST would be used on the IO anyways. But, if you're Soul, it's nice seeing that IO gone. and just being like, okay, I don't have to worry about IO on Danny's part anymore. My spells are safe. So always good to know where the IO is in your opponent's deck or graveyard in this case.
Yep, super powerful.
Yeah.
And though we haven't seen it, we probably won't see it. But a reminder that
Cannon Soldier coming down here. Very, very powerful potential board setup. If they've got like Change of Heart as well, then Raigeki's also going to be pretty good here. If this attack goes through, potentially lethal because that's 2,100, 3,500. You also get the tributes off the Cannon Soldier here. And so Raigeki
and
coming down.
know the IO's gone. Oh, Sangan.
And chaining to Raigeki. We've got Soul firing. What are they going to fire? Maybe Call? MST.
The third MS.
Okay, that's just at the end of the game. Yeah. I was thinking like this actually was an interesting play because Soul could have potentially switched the Morphin to defense here, attacked in for 2,800, and then treated just to play around Mirror Force a bit. But yeah, this was the end of the game. It was over 10 ways to Sunday, and Soul will become the Imperial Locals legend here. So yeah, it's Danny. I guess
once again
just an underpowered hand a bit, because they were not able to deal with a pretty simple board state. But that's occasionally how it happens in Imperial, and you always have to be playing around like IO and stuff. And if Danny didn't have that MST, then could have been rough. But yeah, it looks like they did not have Dark Hole or Raigeki. And yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. They kind of needed Dark Hole or Raigeki to clear that aggressive pressure on Soul's part because Danny was kind of on the back foot for a lot of the game.
Indeed.
But yeah, Tabop, it says, tell duelists not to run away like Bakura. Okay, good to know. I hope they got that message.
I'm not going to do that. Stop.
Yeah. But anyways, it looks like they're diving in here. Just continuing the conversation. And I hope that you all enjoyed watching these games in Imperial format. I mean, it's a format that I haven't really... I mean, I covered it on my channel a while ago, but there wasn't really... I hadn't really seen much coverage since because it is like kind of an obscure format, kind of a niche format. A lot of people just prefer Android. So, yeah. Pavlov is talking to Duelist X, not you, friend, he says. Yeah, but you can settle that on your and Duelist X's time. So yeah. But yeah, let's see if we can get Danny or Soul into the voice chat here. But we'll let them have their sort of after game discussion. But yeah, very cool games. Cool to see Morphing Jar actually get to see some play here, and also cool to see Clown Control get to win a locals. I love Clown Control in these formats, so happy to see it pilot to victory. Soul, congratulations on your win there. And I was just mentioning, I'm always happy when Clown Control manages to make it to the top. So happy to see you piloting this deck to a finish. And what are your thoughts on Clown Control in Imperial format as a whole?
Well, I think part of the inspiration for how I wanted to build this deck, I gotta give credit to both you and also to Blah as well. Because I remember Blah talking about using Last Will, in particular to get out the clowns a little bit faster. And I've sort of been a bit of an advocate for Last Will, so I thought, why not try that out? I think you were saying as well, though, B-Sox, that Crass Clown, sadly, was starting to feel like a little bit slow, like even when you were saying in Treasure format. So I felt like for this build, because I'm taking advantage of, say, having two recruiters with both Tomato and Rat, I felt like, Dream Crown really was like, the best one of the two to really involve the deck around. And I had like two different ideas, because one of them was going to be like this, where it did focus a little bit more into the clown aspect, because I was able to fit in the Wabakus and Rush Recklessly for that reason. But the other idea was to maybe go a bit more Rat Box and add in the Nimble Momangas as well, and maybe Giant Soldier too. But yeah, but I think as a whole, I think this deck, plays well. I think similar to other Last Will decks, like there are the times where, since you are, Last Will, it does need like, another recruiter to work at times. So sometimes, you'll have Last Will, you can't really do much with it or so. But the times when if you're able to find like say game like say in that in the previous in the game 2 that I had against Danny, like I was able to have game because of Last Will, or even be able to maybe put myself in a better position with it when I was a bit behind as well in game 3, being able to have Last Will with Sangan to get not only like a search but also another monster as well to get some board presence there. But I think as a whole, I think in general, I just feel like Last Will is a card that needs to be explored more, and I think with Rat, uh, it just has like a little bit better targets in that regard. So you're trading a little bit of the explosivity for say like Turtle with like a better target, or at least a more conventional target. Some may say with Rat. So yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right that Last Will definitely needs experimentation more, because also to that point, did you find yourself using Last Will more for like the clown part or more for the recruiter part or cannon soldier potentially? Because if you found it more for the clown part, then it might be more specific to this deck. But it seemed to me like you were going for just more like searching out recruiters, searching out things like that, or at least having the option to go for there when a clown play wasn't necessarily the best. So what were your thoughts on that aspect of it?
I think that's probably more or less the basis for at least the recruiter control variants of like Last Will. You often want to keep another recruiter on board, and like effectively if you go into Rat, right, that's still very much like potentially going into a Dream Clown later down the line. So
Yeah.
it's still going to get you to Dream Clown. It may be a little bit later, but that's where why I think generally going for recruiter first is best when you're using Last Will.
Yeah,
in
and
that
in
regard.
recruiter, if you're going for recruiters and it's this powerful for recruiters, I think that does apply to decks beyond clown control as well, and shows that it can be used
Yeah.
in a lot of these decks. Because I remember when the discussion with Last Will and clown control first came up, I myself was against it as well, because I feel like Last Willing out a Dream Clown is honestly not that it's like very fragile. But I think you're absolutely right that Last Willing out a Giant Rat is perfect for the deck because it threatens Dream Clown. And that's why Rat is so strong in clown control in general, because it just threatens Dream Clown, threatens removal, things like that. So yeah, I think it was really cool to see you pilot this list, and you definitely showed that like both clown control and Last Will definitely need more experimentation in this format, as they can be really, really threatening when in the right hands. So congratulations to you again. And let's see, do we have Danny in here as well? It looks like we don't have Danny in here right now.
Yeah.
But it's
but Danny definitely put up a fight, for sure.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I felt like kind of to be honest, I think that's where some may say like when it comes to maybe you say Last Will or even like Clown Control, it probably is gonna be more in like a tier 2 type of status where it can definitely feel at times like you're just having to hope that they don't have like a DM staple. But I guess that can sometimes just be how Yu-Gi-Oh was around this time though too. But yeah.
And as we said, like this is sort of the end of an era, right? Like in Android, clown control really falls out of favor because you can't quite do the same tricks, right? Rush recklessly on a Dream Clown becomes a bit less good when you're facing down a Bazoo or a Gemini Elf. And it's a bit trickier to actually make this deck work. So I think that does show one of the merits of Imperial format, where people say, oh, it's just like Android Lite. But you can play decks that wouldn't work in Android, that are too slow for Android in Imperial, and sort of push them to their limits with the new cards that, Pharaonic Servant introduces. So very, very cool gameplay to watch. I'm glad we got to catch a fair bit of this deck on camera. And I hope this encourages more people out there to try out Imperial format, as it does have its own merits. But I'm gonna call the stream here because it is 11.
Danny just
Danny just joined. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Danny,
Sorry for being late.
I don't think you realized you could join.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, I was I was aware. I was just doing some things right now.
Okay, yeah, no worries. But
okay.
What are your thoughts on your deck that you played? Because we saw some germs in there. We saw some interesting tech. So what's your opinions on that sort of stuff?
I thought playing Giant Germ was a actually good addition to the deck. I mean, it did help me out in some games. I think on the first 2 games.
Mm. Yeah, and we
But then,
did.
like, when I was playing up against Soul during the end, I mean, I did kind of have like I was kind of breaking on 2 copies, which didn't really do much.
Mm. Yeah, and that's always the difficulty with German manga is that like you can potentially brick on them, and that's why a lot of people like don't really like them as much. But I mean, as you said, they do have their very powerful moments, and you can go for a lot of damage with germs. They kind of can function like a cannon soldier in that way, just pumping out a lot of damage really quickly. And in a format like this, which is generally on the slower side, it can be very very powerful to do that.
I mean, yeah, that was
Like
the
even
idea behind it, just to be able to get in some extra damage, crash into it for like the possible win, or even and there's so many ways you can summon it as well, bring it out.
Yeah. So
yeah,
very very
like
cool.
yeah, just I definitely agree with like Danny. I think like Giant Germ is a card that could get more experimentation, similar to like Nimble Manga. But I think in that similar vein too, it's like you are fitting like 3 cards, and that can be sometimes a bit tight when it comes to like deck building wise or so. But I think there's definitely merit to like both of them for sure. Like I was honestly thinking like part of the reason I even had like the Nimbles in the side was I was gonna try and potentially bring them in, but I don't know. I just to be honest, like I think like I don't know. I guess this is the variant that I was fine with like keeping it with the clowns, but I don't know. I think Ratbox as well. Like if you wanted to go around that, I think that should also be given some more attention as
Yeah,
well.
I
I guess.
played that against you.
Yeah, well,
Lost it to a
Souls.
failed top deck.
I mean, honestly, Soul's deck is kind of, in my opinion, like a better version of Ratbox. Like, I feel like Ratbox in this format is kind of just clown control because the only other target worth getting off of Rat is really Momanga. Um, but Momanga is a little bit too passive, and so I like the clown control deck, especially like your build of it, Soul, which is leaning into Rush Recklessly and some other combo pieces. I think this has a lot of promise. So I think like Ratbox, as a lot of people envision it, maybe isn't the best deck in this format, but like Clown Control using rats is, or not the best deck, but like it's very good, as we saw
Yeah.
here. And so I hope people experiment
Dream
with it more.
Clown, yeah.
One can dream,
Sorry,
you know.
Yeah, I get
yeah,
it.
Dream Clown is basically early exiled force,
Yeah,
which
basically.
is one of
Yeah,
Ratbox's big advantages.
Yeah, and that's why it's basically Ratbox's Clown Control in this format. Like that's what it's very similar decks, and it just as Rat gets more targets later, it evolves into a different thing. But still very, very cool to see these decks, see the experimentation in this format. And hopefully, again, hopefully this encourages people to experiment with it even more in the future. But I'm probably going to call it here as it is 11:30 on my side of things. So getting kind of late. But I hope that you all enjoyed as always. We hold these local streams every week. If you do want to, know when they're happening, then subscribing to the channel is the best way to do so. And also, if you want to play in them for yourself, head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server. Link is in the description down below. But I hope that you all enjoyed as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.
Adios.
yeah.
Okay,
That was
good stuff.
it was